intimidated by throwing a bait that big. Do you have any advice for a guy that's looking to get into swim bait fishing and on how to gain confidence in throwing a big bait like that?
Well, yeah, you know, a lot of us, and we all throw a 6-inch soft stick bait, you know, like a Yamamoto Senko, for instance, and we're not afraid of throwing that bait.
That's true.
This bait right here is 6 inches long. The only difference between this and a soft stick bait is it's got more girth to it, and it's got a nice tail that's got more action. So really, if you can just keep that in mind, that you know, these fish, they want to eat a good sized meal. They want an easy meal. They're opportunists. They want the you know, what they can get their feed on with. And this right here is a healthy protein form. You know, this is what they want. And if you just take a look at the bait fish that are in the environment, you'll be surprised how big gizzard shads can get. This is tiny compared to some of the bait that they eat. That's true. So they make a big mouth on them bass for a reason. I do not like to throw swim bait in dirty water. Right. If I do, I'll stick a rattle in it, and that's something you don't hear a lot of guys talk about. Yeah. There's a lot of vibration in this bait in general. We've made it kind of streamlined. The reason
let me go back to the water condition, because I thought that was important. Well, define clear water to you on swim bait fishing. Is it 12 inches, 2 feet, 4 feet?
I'd say 2
What's good visibility?
2 foot. As long as you got 2 foot of visibility, you're probably pretty good. Okay. The cleaner, the better, in my opinion. Right.
Because this is basically a sight fishing.
It is, and you want to pull fish away from cover as far away from it as possible. And the cleaner the water, the better they can, you know, track it. So if you're fishing that dirty water, usually it's a shallower water situation where I'll get on a pretty successful bite, and then I'll start darkening up my swim baits.
I noticed that you have a lot of different retrieves that you use. And some tricks that you use to trigger the strikes.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, you got to get creative with it. You've got to try to let the fish tell you, and that's with any technique, how they want it. And swim bait fishing is probably the most versatile, you know, way to figure out. You know, it's just so confusing sometimes, because sometimes they want it just on a straight retrieve, and it's a no-brainer. It's just spinnerbait fishing 101. Right. Sometimes you've got to twitch it a little bit and make them bite it. And that's just to try to look like something out of the norm from the other bait fish. You know, anytime that bait fish looks injured.
Yeah, Pete.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bass University Live. We're here today. We've got a great topic. We've got a great bunch of guests. But we're only going to be talking about the Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles, tonight. Congratulations to the Birds, E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. Yes, yes.
We're so happy. We're all so happy.
The Pittsburgh fans even celebrating. The Bears fan is celebrating. Even Brian, who doesn't watch football, is celebrating.
I watch football.
It's true.
Only when it matters.
Hey, we're super psyched. Super Bowl 52, the Eagles won. Congratulations. Congratulations to Nick Foles and the Eagles. What a great day. It was a great day at our house. The entire city of Philadelphia is shut down. We're going to be shutting down on Thursday and go and watch that parade.
Are you going to the parade, Pete?
Man, I'm seriously considering it. You know, I mean, I live 15 minutes from the city over there. I'd love to take my boy over to watch the parade.
You're going to take a child over to that?
Well, I'm hoping we can get like the whole all the coaches from the wrestling team and the kids, and so we can go over as a group or something like that. You know, that would be pretty cool. I think I would do it that way.
I got you.
But yeah, I'd be scared to go by myself with a mob of 1 million people.
Yeah.
You know, but I'll watch it either way. But it's really a cool deal. What a game! What a game!
That's bottom line. That was a great game.
Yeah, I mean, and they beat the best. They beat the Patriots, which, you know, hats off to the Patriots. They, no doubt, the greatest of all time quarterback, coach, team, and man, and if not for that strip sack at the end of the game to save it for us, you just knew Brady was going to come down and tie that football game. You knew it was going to happen, but they did it. They pulled it off. Congratulations, guys! But here at the Bass University, we've got some other super champions that we're going to be talking with tonight, and we're going to be diving into something very, very important in the sport of fishing. We're going to be diving into grass fishing, all aspects of it, different types of grass, weather conditions, and all that kind of stuff. So get your questions together for grass fishing. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We've got some super studs in the grass fishing world that we're going to be talking with. One of which is sitting right next to me, is the great Brian Schmidt.
Woo!
How are you, buddy?
Hey guys, thank you for having me. I'm here all night. I'm gonna dive into my comfort zone, which is grass, and I'm looking forward to any questions. And hopefully, I'm gonna help you guys get confidence in grass the way I do. So, looking forward to tonight.
Man, you've got some confidence in grass fishing. How many times have you won on the Potomac River, the Chesapeake, the James River, taking it to Champlain, taking it to the Mississippi River, and almost winning in the grass down at Lake Okeechobee just a couple days ago?
I know. I just I'm very, very comfortable with it. It's been good to me. And some people have confidence in different stuff. You know, some people are real confident in spotted bass, clear lakes, and I'm very comfortable with it. And I kind of have a process that I do, you know, eliminating grass and, you know, figuring out which areas are producing better. And I don't know, it's been good to me, and hopefully I'll shed some light on it tonight.
I have lots of questions. I look forward to finding some of that stuff out. I love fishing grass. I'm a fairly proficient grass angler myself, but
Except Florida.
But I just love to, you know, talk to guys about it, and you know, if I can add one or two things to my arsenal, I get so excited about that. So we're looking forward to talking to you. And we've got Big Fish Bobby Lane coming in. We're going to be calling. He's going to be calling in, talking to him about his big win, the first open of the season, down on the Kissimmee chain of lakes, which, you know, to me, you know, fishing in Florida around grass is probably the most complicated and interesting because there's so many different types of grass. There's like 15 different types of emergent and submergent vegetation. So we're going to be asking Bobby about that, what he targeted, how he decided to do that. And you're welcome to get your IM questions in for Bobby Lane. He's going to be coming up first, right, BTC? He's going to be here in just a few minutes.
That is correct.
Okay, well, hey, if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, we want to invite you to come over and subscribe to bassu.tv, and you can ask your questions to all of us. And that's how you can get your IMs in. That's how you can win prizes. We're giving away prizes to our subscribers with the best questions, the coolest questions, and you can only do that by being a subscriber to Bashu TV. You can certainly watch us here at YouTube and Facebook, but in order to get your questions answered and have a chance at winning these great prizes, come on over and subscribe. And right now, we've got a couple of great promotions going on. And one of them's 10 days free. If you've never subscribed to Bass University TV, you're skeptical, you don't know what's there, come on over and subscribe. 10 days free. You can go through the whole site. We've got over 300 instructional seminars by the greatest anglers in the world, teaching about things that they're really, really good at. Bobby Lane, we did a lot of instructional pieces with him just recently about how he flips and pitches grass, how he, you know, dissects it with swim jigs and all the other types of things that he does in the grass. That type of stuff is available to you with the best anglers in the world competing on the Bassmaster Elites and the FLW Tour. So you can try it for 10 days free, or to honor Bobby Lane's giant win and his giant 31-pound stringer. Oh my God, 31 pounds on day one down there. Just blew the doors off the thing. $31 off an annual subscription to Bass University TV. So that's going to be going on for just a couple more days. That's our Bobby Lane flash sale that I think will be in effect for just a couple more days. And go ahead and take advantage of that. So come on over and subscribe. Get your questions asked to us. Get them ready for Brian. Get them ready for Bobby. So come on over and do that. Now, anybody that subscribes tonight during the show is going to be entered into a prize to win all this Flambeau tackle box and all the cool stuff inside, which I'm looking in there. I see Rapala DT6. I see Topwater. I see all square bill crankbaits, storm baits, Terminator frogs, all kinds of great stuff. About a $50 retail value that you can win. That's going to be for our new, anybody that subscribes during the show, except for that crankbait, which Brian, I thought he was going to take it on us. So anybody who subscribes, you're going to be entered in a contest to win this tackle box full of stuff, and share it. If you share our Facebook live feed, share it right now, you're going to be entered into a contest to win one of these as well. So there are going to be two of our great prizes that we're going to be giving away. But that's not it. We've got a lot of great stuff that we're going to be giving away tonight, including some cool stuff from TH Marine, a G-Force eliminator prop nut that makes your trolling motor go super quiet, which is super key when you're trying to catch those big ones. We're also going to be giving a TH Marine G-Force handle for your trolling motor. Anybody ever break their trolling motor strap? Trolling motor pull cord? I've done it. I've almost fallen in the water 2 or 3 times. I know you have too. But the G-Force handle eliminates that problem. Yeah, it doesn't break. We're going to be giving away that stuff tonight. And Brian, you've brought some cool stuff to give away tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I brought my favorite chatterbait rod. You know, we're going to dive into grass. So I brought my Fitzgerald Brian Thrift Series chatterbait rod. It's one of these rods you got to put in your hand and throw a little bit, and you'll fall in love with it like I did. And I brought an Ardent Apex Graham reel. This is my combo that I'm using for chatterbaiting. You know, I brought some Hayabusa hooks and some Fish Bomb scent here. So, you know, that's what I brought, and we'll dive into everything as well. So.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you bringing all that stuff. Of course, I don't think we're going to be giving away the fishing rod. That might be coming home with me. But I'm a chatterbait guy too. I love throwing it, and I want to pick that rod up. I don't think I've ever had the Fitzgerald in my hands, so I want to kind of check that one out. But how cool is that? We're going to be giving away the chatterbait rod, Ardent reel, lots of cool products. We got giveaways going on all night, and those giveaways happen for the best questions that come in, answers to our trivia questions, all that type of stuff. So come on over and subscribe. Brian, we're going to take a little break right now. We got some more.
Yeah, let's hit up the IM board. IM board's lit up with questions, and let's grab one right now.
There you go. What do you got there, E?
All right, so let's just kick off grass fishing with a little bit of this is a good general question. What's the deepest you've fished grass, and how deep have you seen grass grow?
Man, that's a great question. How deep have you seen grass grow? And I'll take it first, Brian, and then I'll pass it on to the grass guru. But this lake, it always amazed me. Have you ever fished Lake George in New York?
No, I haven't.
It's gin clear. It's like 20 to 40 feet of visibility. It's super clear, and they have what we call shrimp grass that grows down there. It's a super deep growing grass, and it only grows, you know, maybe a foot off the bottom. It grows tight to the bottom, but it grows deep. It grows down into 40, 50 feet of water, and I've caught schools of largemouth relating to shrimp grass in 40 feet of water. And, you know, that's some of the deepest grass I've fished, but that's unusual. Some of the deeper grass that I've seen at different places around the country has been hydrilla that might grow down to about 20 feet of depth, you know, and I've seen it in those types of depth zones, but that's about as deep as I've fished it. But E, was the question just not, was it about how deep you fish, or?
It was, what's the deepest you've seen grass grow, and then how deep have you personally fished it and caught bass in it?
Well, that's the answer. There
you go.
How deep have you fished it? Caught fish?
I have fished it up to about 20 feet, but I was going to, before Pete answered that, I was going to say I believe however deep it grows, I believe fish will use it, and you know, definitely they're going to be in it. So that was pretty cool. I've never done 30 or 40 feet, but I know what kind of grass you're talking about, and so that's pretty cool. Yep. Yeah,
I mean, that's a great point you made, Brian. And that's the truth. If there's grass in your lake, you need to be fishing it. That's the bottom line. If you're a tournament guy, if there's grass in a lake, the patterns that are going to win the tournament are going to be grass patterns. So no matter how deep it grows, you gotta look there. The fish are definitely going to use it. It creates so many different things for fish: feeding opportunities, ambush opportunities. The bait fish have a place to hide, a place to feed. So if there's grass in a lake, you got to fish the grass. Great question. What else you got, E?
This is an interesting one from Dustin. So he says, when you find a grass flat and you're looking for points, pockets, holes in it, whatever, do you ever use your side imaging to look for those holes, or do you just get up on the flat with your trolling motor and start searching around? That's
a great question. Do you use sonar to find the irregularities of a grass bed? Man, absolutely. We've got some amazing sonar technology that is extremely helpful. The side imaging component, which I have a lot of experience with, I've used extensively to find things in the grass beds, points of grass, indentations in the grass. Or in the early season, side imaging is so valuable, right? finding that early grass growth.
Absolutely, that cuts it down. And you know, half the time it used to take us just to idle with just traditional sonar. And you know, when you fishing grass in the middle of summer, it's, you know, a lot of times it's grown to its peak and you could see it. But like he said, early in the year, we're side imaging. I'm using pan optics, seeing in front of the boat, and that's key. Irregularities are the biggest key when it comes to grass. And you know, like he said, that side imaging and pan optics and stuff like that cuts it down in half the time.
It definitely does. You know, but there's no replacing looking and feeling. You know, some of the things that I use in grass are transmission tools. One of the things that that when the grass is peaked out in the summertime, like we're up in the north part of the country, right? So our grass dies. So you get these flat bottoms in the wintertime, and then what happens is the grass will start growing, and you can see that early grass growth. And the first place grass starts growing, it's like boom, that's where they gravitate to. And if you can find that, I mean, that's magic. You're going to have all the fish, the biggest pre-spawn fish, you know, with the big fat bellies. They're going to be on that early grass growth. But when the grass is mature, it's harder, right? You know, you've got to work with your electronics. I try to use my electronics, and I adjust the sensitivity when I'm idling through a grass bed such that I can see how deep it is. You ever been in the situation where the grass blocks your sonar out and you can't get a clear reading?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you got to be able to read it. Because what'll happen is when the grass is mature like that, it's a depth change, or that'll be where the bass are located. And if you can't tell if there's a depth change, then you're just going to miss it. But other things you could do is, like when you're flipping, I like to flip with fluorocarbon and tungsten, or braid and tungsten. A lot of times when I'm practicing and exploring, because it tells me what's down there. When a tungsten weight hits a rock, dunk, you can feel it, and it's so different from hitting a mush bottom, you know.
Absolutely. So what Pete's getting into there, you know, hard bottom is one of the biggest keys that can really hold a huge number of fish in a small area. You know, you might find some grass and it's kind of a mucky, soft bottom, and then like Pete said, all of a sudden you start to feel a little bit harder bottom, and also you start getting some bites. So that's, you know, a 100% a big key is finding a distinctive hard bottom in the grass or next to the grass.
Absolutely. So sonar is definitely key, but you still got to use the tools that are available to you to become a good grass fisherman. What you got, E? Great question.
Were we going to go to commercial or do another one?
More questions coming our way.
Yep.
We're going to be taking a commercial break right here. So if you're not a subscriber, this will be a great time to do it. Is to go over and subscribe to Bass U TV. We're gonna take about a 2-minute break after we answer this question, and you can come over, subscribe, and get your question answered if you guys are watching this on Facebook and YouTube.
All right, here's one. So when fishing a swim/bladed jig in grass, if you could only have one weight, what would the weight be?
Man, that's a great question, Brian. I'm gonna throw that one to you. I know you love to fish them. I do too. What do you think?
I'm gonna go with a 1/2 ounce. I was a 3/8 ounce for a long time, and the reason I'm gonna say a 1/2 ounce is because you can change your line size to dictate how shallow or deep you could fish it. So with a 3/8, you can only reach a certain amount of depth, but with a 1/2, you could get down to 5, 6, 7 foot, or keep it up in 2, 3 foot on just changing your line size. So 1/2 ounce.
I refuse to accept the premise of that question. I am not switching. I mean, I can't limit myself to one. And I'll give you a quick story on this one. I do a lot of teaching and guiding on the Chesapeake, and the chatterbait bite is one of the best in the world out there. And you know, we're fishing along, and I'm fishing with these two guys. I always throw 3 different colors. I keep it simple as I can. And I have each of us throwing a different color until we can dial in on which one they want to bite that day. And the father sitting in the back jacks a 4-pounder, and me and the son don't catch any. So I tie one on the same color as the dad, and he proceeds to catch another one. But now my clients, now I tie on the same. We're all throwing the same color now, and the father is just catching them at least 4-1 on all of us. And if this went on all day, and it happens sometimes,
okay,
right? Somebody gets the feel, And anyway, I'm getting ready to go to a different body of water, and I'm clearing out the rods, cutting, and I look at the chatterbaits that we had tied on. He had a 1/4 ounce on, and we had 3/8 ounce on. And what was happening in my assessment of the situation is because I was using the heavier weights, we had to bully that bait through that grass, and a lot harder than he did. He was able to feather it, work the bait a little bit slower, and that was a very important key that day.
Yes.
And you know, so as a result, man, I have 1/4s, 3/8, halves. I gotta have all three. I'm not picking just one. I don't accept that question.
You forgot one, Pete.
What's that?
I said you forgot one.
What's that? The 3/4
or 5/8?
Or the 5/8? Yeah.
I fished a derby on the flats with McGraw, and he never got bit. I had 7 bites that day. At the end of the day, we looked at him. I said, "Man, mine looks heavier." It was a 5/8.
Yeah.
It was a brutally windy day, and I mean, to the point where we were the only boat that stuck it out on the flats. Everybody bailed, you know, and we had the power poles down, just kind of like dragging to slow us down to try to keep us on a drift on the grass edge. But it was 5/8 made a huge difference in being able to feather and touch that bottom.
See, I didn't think about that. The wind too. The wind could, you know, definitely dictate what weight you use. So, for all the circumstances, I would go with the half. You know,
right.
If you had to pick one, and I get that, and you know, and that those heavier weights are available to us now, and you know, so but it's an incredibly versatile bait. There's absolutely a very, very versatile bait. BTC,
take us out. We're going to play commercial.
Okay, we're going to be right back. For everybody that is watching us on Facebook and YouTube, come on over and try Bass U. Use the code TRYBU. You get 10 days free. Come on over. You can ask all the IM questions that you would like about grass fishing to Brian, to Bobby Lane, about the Philadelphia Eagles and how awesome they are. Any of those questions you can ask. Come on over, subscribe, take advantage of our biggest discount we've ever had, which is we're celebrating Bobby Lane's 31 pounds and his win down at the Bassmaster Tournament just this past week. $31 off annual subscriptions. It's a tremendous deal. Take advantage of it. Come on over, subscribe to Bass U TV. We're going to be right back in just a couple of minutes with Bobby Lane, with Brian Schmidt, and grass fishing. We're diving in deep. I'm Pete Gluzak. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Scott Suggs. I'm from Bryan, Arkansas. Probably my most favorite fishing story is the final day of the 2007 FLW Cup. I pulled in on a place I've fished all my life. I hadn't fished it all that week in the event. It's the last day. It's up in the middle of the day. I make the cast out there and I catch a 5-pounder to seal the deal. That'll go down in history for my favorite day. I've fished offshore. I've fished in Spain. I bass fished in Spain. I've fished all over the world, really, and it's hard to leave home. The best fishing's right here within 3-4 hours of where I live, and I'm happy. I'm pacified here. You know, a perfect day is unbelievable. It's when you get up in the mornings, you get that one good cup of coffee, you relax, you're going out there, you lay it all on the line, you go out there and then it works perfect. I just come off of a tournament that way. The first day of the event, you know, I caught them quick. I caught a big bag quick. It settles you down, not only for that day, for the rest of the tournament. I must have gear as sunglasses. It doesn't matter where we go, you've got to have those sunglasses. You know, the lenses in the popsicles are Zeiss lenses, and everybody knows how clear and what a great view you get out of a Zeiss scope for hunting. So these are made out of nylon that makes them super duper light, makes them that much more comfortable. There's something about the polarization in the popsicles that everything is so clear. Mainly it takes the glare away. And that's the deal at the end of the day. You're squinting all day, you have a headache, it takes that glare away, you can fish nice and relaxed. I wear 2 different ones. I wear either a gray or a dark lens on a sunny day, wear a yellow or bronze, you know, something brighter on a cloudy day, and I'm able to see everything I'm looking at. I'm not having to tilt my head and take second guesses. The first look is what I'm seeing. Pack small, live big.
Dude, I'm good. Just give me a little bit of money.
Yeah. We're live.
We're back.
We're back.
Welcome back to Bass University Live. You guys just saw a commercial from Popsicles, and I just want to show them to you here. Popsicles. Man, this is a great little product. I love using it. It packs up into these tiny little case that I can carry with me so I don't lose them. And, just simply, put them together real quick and boom, you're out fishing. You've got the best lenses in the business. They're nylon. They're polarized nylon glasses. They're lighter. They're clearer. And you know what? It's key when it comes to grass fishing. A lot of people think that you got to have good glasses to be able to maybe see bedding fish or something like that, but you cannot discount the importance of having good optics when it comes to seeing stuff, different types of vegetation, holes in the grass. You got to be able to see,
I don't know how many times I have found really productive areas simply because I've seen fish swimming because I had good glasses on. And nothing beats seeing them. So
when you know they're there,
they're there.
and that's key. I mean, you can see the deeper grass edges. You can see grass that's dead, grass that's alive. There's so many things that you can pick up. And I see guys get out and they maybe don't wear them. If I don't have my popsicles in my boat when I idling out of the dock, I will turn around to go back and get them out of the truck. If I left them in there, I can't fish without my glasses.
Or just look at your windshield or your motor cowling after you've run around for an hour in a grass fishery and look at all the bugs that are there and be glad that they didn't hit you in your eyes.
Yeah, the protection component of it, and that's a key thing. The deflection, the protection that the glasses offer is key. So many times we're flipping with jigs and heavy weights, and you set that hook and it comes back at you. And I've seen injuries as a result of it. I've seen guys get hit in their glasses. So it's key to have a good pair of glasses that can protect your eyes from that perspective too. But I wear them all the time. Keeps the wind out. But you got to have them. So go check out Popsicles right now. All subscribers to Bass University TV, you go to Pro offers down on Bass University, and we have all types of cool offers there, including the Rapala offers, where you can get 30-40% off Rapala stuff. We offer discounts on Popsicles from time to time, where you can get big discounts on these amazing products that really, really help your fishing. So that's another component of Bass University TV subscribers. But as I look in the back, BTC's waving at me, so that must mean we have a caller ready to go.
That it does.
Do we have the champ, Big Fish Bobby Lane, on the telephone right now?
You got it, buddy. How are you?
Hey man, I'm super fantastic. The Eagles won the Super Bowl, and Big Fish Bobby Lane won down at Kissimmee. What could be better than that?
I'm telling you, not much. And I apologize. I got a little bit of cold, so I'm congested up and don't sound real hot. But I'm telling you, what a win it was. I couldn't be more excited.
Man, you're sick. You're calling in. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you calling in. I mean, you're down preparing for the Lake Martin tournament. I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us tonight. So we're going to try to, we're going to value your time, and we're going to get some questions into you. But really appreciate you, calling in, Bobby. But man, what a great win! You absolutely dominated the field. You had a 31-pound stringer. Have you come down off the high yet? Are you still pumped?
No, I'm still living the high. I just, of course, I'm seeing all my fellow competitors on the Elite Series, and they're all congratulating me as we were putting our boats on the trailer. So, it's still sinking in as much as I need to put it on the back burner and focus on this tournament here. I'm still living every minute down there in this Kissimmee chain of lakes, because it was a long time coming. I mean, I was due for a win well, you never say you're due for a win, but I was, I put my time in down there, and I felt like I got shortchanged myself a few times and made a few bad decisions, and I finally put the pieces of the puzzle together, and Lord willing and a little luck on my side, I caught that big bag the first day, and it really pushed me through the rest of the tournament.
Man, it sure did. I mean, geez, you did the heavy lifting right on day one, and we're here, man. We're talking about grass fishing, and Florida is probably the ultimate study in grass fishing. There's a million different types of grass down there. How did you figure out? Can you tell us a little bit about like what grasses you caught your big fish on, and how'd you make adjustments to it? How did that pattern come together, and what kind of grass were you fishing?
Yeah, down in Florida, we're dealt with, of course, you got Kissimmee grass, which grows up on the outside, and we have hydrilla, we have pintail, and that's really about it. We don't get a lot of milfoil like people do up north and in Alabama and stuff like that. But I think what was going on, to be honest, is we've been dealt with a series of cold fronts, probably the worst we've had in 5 years, I would think. And those fish were, they were battered, beat from the wind and the cold, and they really didn't know what to do. And, it seemed like if I was fishing anything that was clean, that had normally where they would spawn, that was kind of the way I looked at it. Where they normally would spawn, they weren't in there real good yet. I mean, you could catch some, but you couldn't catch anything with size. But I noticed if I kept myself around hydrilla and coontail, that had some opening in it. Now, of course, it wasn't matted, and the cold fronts had knocked it down, and the birds beat up some of it. But lily pads, Kissimmee grass, and a little bit of vines here and there, and it had some open holes in it. And if you could find that, you could find bigger fish. And that was my key, really, all week long, was running that Ray Marine Axiom Pro up and down the lake, 65 miles an hour with my high-speed sonar, looking for anything that had hydrilla around it, even growing out towards the lake, and I could get inside and kind of pick it apart. I found 2 or 3 areas like that. I could eliminate a lot of water quickly having that high-speed sonar on, so, everything went to plan, and I think they felt secure in there. The wind would not dirty up the water. They felt like, once they got in that hydrilla, they didn't need to leave, but I think, honestly, they were bedding in there.
Well, so that's pretty awesome, because we just had a question about that earlier about how do you use your sonar to find grass. So you mentioned it, like high speed, so you're driving at 65 miles an hour. Are you looking out? You're not looking out the side at that speed, right? You're trying to find.
No, you're right. I'm keeping my eyes glued on my graph. Of course, I'm watching where I'm going, but we get hydrilla beds down here that there can be 100 yards. They can be up to half a mile. And what you would do is look to where the openings were in the hydrilla. Like if you were running, and let's say 50 miles an hour, and your graph picked some up, and it was all the way to the surface, you would shut the boat down and look at it, and it would just be solid hydrilla. Wouldn't be matted like you'd want to see in the summertime where you flip or something. It would just be kind of all the way up to the surface. And that doesn't give the fish room to kind of swim around in. So I would, once I found it like that, I would idle around and look to see if there was any open holes. If there weren't, then I would just keep cruising around. And like I said, I could cover so much water in all the lakes so quickly by doing that. And that was key to my success for sure.
That's awesome. Now other types of grass, like you're talking about submergent grass, did like the reeds or the pencil reeds or lily pad, did any of that stuff play into your pattern?
Oh yeah, that was growing in the hydrilla also. And what that does is that the hydrilla, where those were growing, the hydrilla doesn't grow right up to those lily pads, the pencil reeds, the Kissimmee grass, the I call it monkey vine, but it's a big vine that grows down there. When you see that kind of stuff, normally the hydrilla will grow around it, in some cases, not all cases, but what you would do is troll around with your trolling motor and look at those areas that had that grass, and if it had open holes, then the fish would be down in there spawning, and all you had to do was, pitch your worm over there. I was throwing a Polarized Max General June bug. You would pitch that in there on a flat out tungsten weight, man, and your line would go swimming off, and you didn't know if it was a 2-pounder or an 8-pounder. It was kind of neat. You never knew what you were going to set the hook on.
Well, you managed to set the hook on a few 8-pounders, I noticed. And
I did. I had an 8.5. I caught the 8.5-pounder actually on my new Powerbait rib toad. I caught that fish in Lake Kissimmee, and even though he was a little bit shallower than the rest of the fish came, it was still around hydrilla that was kind of growing off the bank out towards the lake, and it was just a great decision for me to run there the first day about midday and make a few casts in there, because that's where that big one was.
That was a top order fish?
Wow.
It was a top water. My rib toad is a swimming toad. It's a swimming frog. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That first day it warmed up nice, and I had a pretty good fish early, and caught another one fairly early, and then I caught that 8.5-pounder about 12:30. Then I caught another 5-pounder at 1:30, and then I ran back into Tolo and caught a 3-pounder and called out a 1.5 pounds or so. Kind of just made the best of every lake,
Man, you sure did, and you lapped the field there on day one. It was amazing to see you staying so far out in the front, and then typical Florida tightened up for you on the second day with a smaller stringer, and this was amazing because we were watching the weigh-ins, and with a 10-pound stringer, you actually increased your lead on the field. which
that was crazy. I came in the weigh-in. I was boat 5 the first day, and I was boat 205 on the second day. And when I came in the weigh-in, there was about 120 that had already weighed in. And I looked and I saw that I was leading, and I'm like, that ain't right. So I hit leaderboard to refresh, and it said I was still leading. I hit leaderboard again and refreshed. About that time, my dad called and said, "Can you believe nobody stopped you?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And that's when I kind of knew that, even with my 10 pounds, I was still going to have a good opportunity to be in the lead. I just didn't know how much it was going to be, because once again, in Florida, guys, and I mean, the big fish swim down there, and even though I caught a 31-pound bag, anybody else had that opportunity to do that all week. And I was a nervous wreck and fished my butt off all the way to the last minute of the final day, because 30-pound bags are possible and even a little bigger. Mm-hmm. And then there was a full moon and it was kind of warm. So I was not happy, I was glad that I had 18 pounds on the final day, but I was still, fishing my lights out, trying to make sure that I could catch everything that bit and never say I'm done, because once you do that, normally that's when it ends up going south for you.
Well, it didn't go south for you. I think would you need 2 pounds on the final day to win the tournament? Was it something like that?
Yeah, I had 18 pounds. I needed 5'11" to win, and I had 18. So
yeah,
it was a blowout. It really was. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's a huge win, and that was awesome to watch. But we're giving away prizes for guys that are calling in with questions, and I see we got a few more questions for Bobby from IM board. Eric, what do we got?
A couple people, specifically Brazzy, have been asking about how apparently you prefer using a frog with a single hook versus a frog with a double hook. Can you explain to us what you feel some of the advantages are using that single hooked frog?
Yeah, I throw that rib toad on a 5/0, 6/0 trocar. It's the TK 130. It's not the real heavy hook, but it's heavy enough. I throw it on 50-pound braid. The reason I don't like the double hook is because it seems like it's kind of a pain in the butt to rig sometimes. Like, you got to get both those hooks up there. You got to bend the frog and get them to skin back, and it's hard to get those two hooks through any kind of plastic, to be honest. That's why the 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 spro frogs and the popping frogs, the hooks are exposed because they need to be exposed. When you start cramming them into plastic, then you got to pull that much more wire through plastic, and we all know no matter how hard you set the hook, sometimes you come back with a balled up bait. So with a single hook, you actually get the hook slides through the plastic better, and I feel like with that 50-pound braid, I throw it on an 8.0 reel ALX with a Fantasy Premier rod, 7'3" heavy, and I let those fish, when they get it, I let them swim with it a little bit, and I set hard. When I hit them, I feel like that hook has no choice but to go with them, and then it's just a matter of getting them in the boat. I think the double hook is just a little too much for a swimming frog.
That's awesome that you let them have it a little bit, because we get conflicting, or people have different opinions on, how to set the hook on that frog, whether to hit them on the strike or to hesitate. But I appreciate that you hesitate, because I do that too, and it helps my strike to catch ratio. But didn't we just film a lot of this great instructional stuff with you on Bass University TV?
You got it. I caught a nice fish on that frog, and if you actually watch that video, you'll see when that fish hits that I drop my rod and I actually let him take it a little bit, and then I set the hook and he was buried. You want to hook them 10 to 2. That's what I always say. From 10 o'clock, from the top of the mouth to 2 o'clock, and 10 o'clock on each side. That's where the hardest part of the fish's mouth is, and that's when you know you got a good hook if it penetrates anything through there. And a lot of people want to set the hook as soon as it blows up, but man, it takes patience and a lot of time in the water. But once you learn it, you will catch more fish from a frog for sure.
Well, I didn't know if you knew this, Bobby, but we're celebrating your win and your 31-pound stringer with a $31 off our annual subscribers for Bass U TV. And they can go.
Wow.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing, and we just did so much work with you down there, and it was great. Advanced instruction, really detailed stuff. We got a tremendous amount of feedback and a lot of views on the stuff you did with us down there, and I appreciate that. And I think the people that are gonna watch Bass University are gonna really appreciate it. It's gonna help them be better grass anglers. And but guys can get that. Go over to bassu.tv, and right now it's a flash sale that's going on just for a couple more days, where you can get $31 off an annual subscription for Bass University TV. But what else you got, E?
Yeah, here's an interesting question from Tommy, which pertains to more general grass fishing. When talking northern lakes versus southern lakes, do you ever approach fishing grass on northern bodies of water differently than you would fishing it on southern bodies of water?
That's a great question, and I think when you get around grass, my eyes just light up, and I want to do a few things. I want to throw a swim jig, I want to flip it, I want to frog it, and those are the three key things that I want to do. And I'll fish. Bass are all the same. They look for cover. They look for places to hide. Somewhere they can get where they can ambush something. And I really think northern. I've won 2 strings on the Potomac River, and I caught them using the exact same line, hook, weight, and bait that I use down here in Florida. So I attack it exactly the same. It just might be a different style of grass, but I would use those 3 techniques for sure. And then, of course, when it's cold, you might, chatterbait or something on the outside of it. But I love to flip, swim jig, and frog it first. And that seems to be where the big ones love to be. And if you can find them, it's harder for guys to catch up to you.
I agree, and one of the things that I saw is the line that you use. Obviously, you're a spider wire guy. Are you in Florida, and when you fish grass, are you tying braid direct? Do you ever use leaders? How do you go about selecting your line?
My take on that is if I'm going to put a leader on braid, then I'm weakening the braid already by tying a knot to a leader, and then I got another knot going to my bait. So I'm weakening the whole setup. I've caught giant fish, sight fishing in crystal clear water on 65-pound braid, and I've caught them in dirty water on 65-pound braid. my motto is that fish is not paying attention to my line. All he cares about is my bait going in the water. So I will only tie it to my spinning reels with 10-pound ultra cast. I will use, 6, 8, 10, 12-pound fluorocarbon leader when I'm smallmouth fishing or maybe skipping a shaky head around. But other than that, when I'm flipping, frogging, or swim jigging, it is always straight braid, and it helps too because you don't have that knot dragging through that grass that can pick up a little extra slime or anything like that. And I really do think you weaken the braid when you tie a knot to it. So my take is if you do it, learn the FG knot. It's a special knot that uses fluorocarbon and braid. And really not on your bait caster so much, but if you're going to spin and rod fish or drop shot or shaky head, I definitely recommend it for those purposes. And try to Google or YouTube that FG knot, and it seems to be 100% for sure.
Yeah, well, not all of us get to catch 8 and 9 pounders all the time, so I can see the importance of having having strong line. But what do you got, E?
Yeah, Charlie wants to know, when punching mats, if you could only pick one grass bait to punch mats with, what would be your bait of choice?
Wow, what a question. I tell you, my new favorite line of baits, and they launched last year in September, Power Bait Max Sit. Guys, they make our creature bait, our general, these things are phenomenal. My daughter whipped my butt on them 2 or 3 days in a row when I was throwing something else just to see what the comparison ratio was. And it was like 6 to 1, and she's 13 years old, and she killed me. And the more I've been using those baits, the more bites I get, it seems like the fish hang on longer. So if I had to pick one bait, it would be a Power Bait Max Sense creature bait that would be in black and blue. And I don't care what color the water is. That's probably what I'd pick 2 colors, black and blue and green pumpkin. That's all I'll ever use.
Excellent. Now, well, I don't know if you know, Bobby, but we've got Brian Schmidt in studio with us here, who also is a grass phenom. Do you have a best punching bait, preferred bait?
Do I? Oh, Brian?
Hey, how you doing, Bobby? Congratulations,
Good,
man.
Brian. Great job down there in Okeechobee.
I know that feeling that you had that made you want to keep fishing till the last second because you knew you were in Florida and anything could happen. And, Tim Frederick got blessed with, a monster bite in the last couple of minutes in Okeechobee. So I know the feeling, man.
Yep. You can never give up down there. You never give up.
So, yeah, as far as a flipping bait, I'm with Bobby. Black and blue, green pumpkin. That's it. I mean, I'm with Bobby in a lot of ways there. I don't think you got to get too crazy with the colors or certain things like that. It's when it pops in there, they got a decision to eat it or not. And I mean, Bobby, don't you think it's just a reaction bite?
That's why I never tie leader to my braid, because they're not paying attention to the line. They got a decision to make. Right, they're going to eat it or they're not going to eat it. Now, you could hop in a couple of times and see if there's one in there, depending on water temp. But normally, if you're around a good group of fish, that first few flips, they will jump a foot of slack in your line if you're around a school of fish, and that's the kind of bite you're looking for sure.
Now, do you differentiate? Because this is a problem that I have and a lot of people have around the country, is that we don't believe that Florida bass actually bite lures. So can you give us any tips about how to trigger a Florida strain, or is there anything different you do around Florida strain versus northern strain bass?
Well, northern strain bass seem to feed more consistently throughout the day. It's kind of you can start catching them in the morning and then you can catch them all day long. Florida bass are kind of finicky sometimes. You really need to kind of key in on when did they bite the best. I mean, generally there's an hour or 2 window when they're really going to fire. And the big ones, not just pounder, 2 pounders. When those big ones decide to maybe move in or move out, you know, blah, blah, blah. In summer, it gets a little iffy, you know, they get out on them brush piles, but in an early bite, of course, in the summer because it's so hot down there. But any time between then, it's really when you got to kind of figure out when the big fish are biting. Are they biting early or are they biting at 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock? Where do I need to be? And the only way to learn that is keep yourself in areas that are well known, just like you guys talk about. If you send somebody to Okeechobee, you tell them to go to the Monkey Box, you tell them to go to the North Shore, down to South Bay. It's really just keep yourself in areas that have great big fish. And when you do get a big bite, kind of remember when you got that bite, because you got to remember one thing in Florida, where there's one, there's always another big one around. You never catch one big one by itself, but you just got to kind of figure out when timing is, when those big ones want to feed and then they don't feed.
Wow, that's interesting to me because I mean we're both Tidal guys, Brian, and we pay.
Tidal's the same way.
Yeah, it's exactly the same way, and I never really thought about it that from that perspective when I've been down in Florida. So that's very, very helpful to me, and I'm sure a lot of guys listen to the broadcast. Got any more questions for Bobby?
Yeah, here's a good one from Mark. He goes, I'm really new to bass fishing and still have a lot of techniques I'd like to try. As far as trying out frogs goes in the spring, what is the best all-around color I could start with?
You really can't beat green pumpkin. You know, I carry 4 or 5 colors in my boat. I keep it green pumpkin, watermelon red, black, and white. I mean, those are just like 4 of the best colors out there. But if I had to pick one all-around color that shines everywhere, it would be green pumpkin or green pumpkin red. I mean, those really are basically the same, but that would be the color.
Excellent. Well, those are great questions. What I'd like for you guys is to select some of those questions. I want to give away some prizes.
What's Brian and Pete got to say to that question?
On the frog,
color.
What do you say about color on a frog?
On a frog, I've had some of the best success with black anywhere I've ever been. You know, for different conditions, you know, clouds, sun, and that might be a tidal thing, you know, but black or green pumpkin, but black would probably be my number one.
And you know, it depends on the kind of, you know, whether you're throwing the buzz toad like, you know, I think we were just talking about, or the hollow belly stuff. But you know, I use black, I use white, and I use green pumpkin. They're the three. They're the 3 that I use. And I've actually taken a tip from Ish that has helped me a little bit. Ish has done some Bass University seminars with us, and when it's sunny out, he tends to throw the white one. When it's cloudy out, he tends to throw the black one. And that's not automatic, but those are some good rules of thumb to start fishing with. You know, where you can get out there and you know, if you've not fished a frog and you're looking to gain confidence, that's a really good place to start. But boy, you know, Bobby's right. It's hard to beat green pumpkin in just about any place you go. But I do want to give you a piece of advice. And I know you're not allowed to get information on Lake Martin, but where you're at right now, Bobby. But I wanted to give you a piece of advice down there. Is I want you to go research the guy that won the 1999 Lake Martin Bassmaster tournament and read about how he won that tournament in February, and it'll tell you all you need to know.
Hey, I appreciate that. I could use it.
and his name is Pete Gluzak, bitches, in case you were wondering.
Yeah. I bet he wasn't flipping grass.
No, we were not flipping grass down at Lake Martin, but there might be some there now. Who knows? But
no. Well, if there is, it's not obvious anyway. But,
hey man,
guys, I got to run. Is there any more questions?
No, I was just trying to, you know, give you a chance to get, and I want you to do well, get some rest. Hope you feel better soon. Congratulations again on a great win, and man, we'll be pulling for you down there at Lake Martin, buddy.
Thank you very much, guys. Mr. Smith, I'm glad you're on there. Good job, Okeechobee, and keep it up for the rest of the year. And guys, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for everything.
Oh, you bet, buddy. Thanks for coming on. Good luck,
See you, Bobby. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Yeah, what a deal. What a deal. coming off a great win, taking the time to come and talk with us. You know, a lot of you guys, you know, practicing for these major tournaments, a lot of guys are going sunrise to sunset, working so hard down there. So I'm really appreciative that he would make the time to come and talk to us, because I probably wouldn't make that kind of time if I was in that Derby.
No, I mean, you heard he has a cold. He just got over a big win. And, you know, right now his mind is going a million miles per hour trying to think, what did I do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? And he took the time tonight, so that was pretty cool, you know, to come talk. So. And,
well, you know, the other thing that you got to really account for, and this is why, you know, I mean, love the sport, is momentum. We talk about it a lot. I mean, you know, he's coming off a big win. Confidence is super, super high, even though it's a completely different body of water. Carrying that momentum into Lake Martin is going to be a big deal.
Huge. Momentum is so huge in bass fishing. It's unbelievable. And it's just something that just happens, and it can roll on for a little bit. So hopefully it keeps going for Bobby there for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. The Lane brothers. Two of the best brothers in bass fishing. We've got the Lee brothers also got a classic. They just added a classic championship to their deal. But we're gonna keep talking about grass, guys. So keep them IM questions coming in. We're gonna dive into things a little bit deeper with Brian, and we're gonna talk about a lot of different stuff. But I want to take this time, if you haven't subscribed to Bass U TV and you want to ask some questions, come on over and subscribe. We got $31 off annual subscriptions going on right now. That deal's going away. It's the best discount we've ever had at Bass University. Or if you just want to try it for 10 days free, you can use the code TRYBU. So guys watching us on YouTube and Facebook, come on over. Prizes we're giving away tonight. One prize we're going to be giving away for anybody that shares our Facebook live feed. Go ahead and share it. We're going to enter you into a contest. You're going to win this Flambeau tackle box full of Rapalas and Storm and Terminator Frog I see down in there hiding. And anybody that subscribes to Bass University TV tonight is also going to win one of those tackle boxes. And we've got a lot of other great prizes to give away. So keep the questions coming in. But right now, Brian, I think we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk to Brian about how he fishes grass. And, you know, grass fishing, you know, there's a lot of guys that are good at it. You've won tournaments on bodies of water that have grass, that have a lot of good grass anglers. I mean, the guys that fish the Potomac, that fish the Chesapeake, they're good grass. I mean, they're good at doing it. And you've been able to win multiple times on the Potomac and the upper Chesapeake using your grass strategies. You know, I guess I want to ask you, you know, what are some of the tips that you can tell somebody that's maybe attacking grass for the first time, how they can develop their confidence in grass fishing?
The simple way I could explain that is how I fell in love with it. You know, you go to a lake or you go to a body of water, and, you know, it could be the same old stump. It could be the same old rock pile, the same old boat dock. And, you know, sometimes you even get to name the fish that you catch off there. You know, it's the same. It's the same. And what grass to me is, it's always changing, and it keeps my interest up. There's always a magic spot. You got to remember that with grass. If you're not catching them, you know, it could be the tide, but you got to keep checking areas, keep searching, because there is a gold mine with pure numbers and size to be found. And that's what intrigued me with it. So with that, you know, with me being intrigued that much, it really made me focus in on the grass and all in on the grass. And then it takes some time. Like, I got my butt kicked for years, you know, and it just takes some time. You gain confidence slowly, and then you get some techniques that you get good at. And when you just consistently stay with something, you know, you're just going to get better at it. So, you know, but just finding that gold mine one time will get you. It'll keep you in the grass for sure.
It is amazing because when and I've been fortunate enough to find that gold mine every once in a while, and it's never during the tournament, but no, it is fun when it happens, because it just seems like they're everywhere, and you can learn so much about how to trigger strikes and the different tools that work when you're around a group of fish like that. But what are some of your tools in grass fishing to be able to trigger some of these strikes? And maybe even more importantly, how do you trigger the biggest fish in that school, which helps you win those tournaments?
Okay, you know, that's a simple, this is going to sound simple to you, but it's either a fast presentation or a slow presentation. When you're dealing with a fast presentation, it could be a topwater, it could be a vibrating jig, it could be a swim jig, it could be a rattle trap, but that's a fast presentation. If it's slow, you're flipping or you're dead sticking a soft plastic, you're really picking the area apart. You let the fish tell you what they want. You don't fish how you want to fish. You let the fish tell you. And also, it's, are they in the grass or are they on the edge of the grass? And that's the big deal too. So once you figure those two pieces out, then you play with the baits. You go through a rotation. If it's a slow presentation, okay, all right, do they want a bigger, you know, a bigger flipping bait or a smaller flipping bait? What weight, you know? And you have to play with it down to a science, and eventually you're going to see a pattern when it comes to the bigger bites. And you take that, and then it becomes persistence. And you know, you can't be scared to lose. Sometimes you're going to fish for 5 or 6 bites, but you know, if you get 5 or 6 bites on that specific technique, they're going to be the right bites.
Right. Well, that's huge. And you talked about different flipping baits. And what are the baits that you're flipping in? I mean, what are your confidence baits when it comes to flipping in grass?
Yeah, you know, I'm dark colors. Dark colors is a big deal. Green pumpkin to dark. I keep it simple with that. You know, a Riot Baits Fuzzy Beaver can be probably my #1 bait. You know, I'll pick that. Or I'll switch it to the little fuzzy beaver as well. But you let the fish tell you, okay? So you might see a bluegill swimming around too, and you take all the signs. So the bluegill's big or the bluegill's small, or you can hear the bluegills popping in the grass, or you might see crayfish crawling in the grass. You got to use all the signs.
Right. Now, when you're flipping, Bobby talks about that, and I've seen that too. You know, when he to trigger the strike, basically it's about the presentation and not so much about how you're working the bait, right? Is that pretty much your deal?
Exactly. You know, stealthiness is key in grass. They can feel you from a long distance. Your trolling motor, every time you touch that, you can consider a 20-foot radius around your boat. They know you're there. So those big fish they're intelligent. So you want to be, you know, you want to take your time, be quiet, use the wind to your advantage, drift around, and you want to make precise casts or flips to, you know, if you're noticing they're near clumps or they're in the thickest junk you see, whatever it is, precise, and take advantage and try to use every cast in the productive water. But be quiet is a big thing.
Well, and you know, we talk about that G-force prop nut, which definitely helps you be quiet. We're going to be giving one of those away tonight. Do you use your trolling motor at all? Do you dial it down, or how do you handle the trolling motor?
I have to use it at times, you know, and you're going to use it to find the fish. You know, you're not always going to have the perfect wind or the perfect current to not use it. You're going to have to use it. But once you do locate the area, you know, if you're coming back for the tournament, you want to keep that in mind. And you're going to have to really slow down and be as quiet as you can.
What about and you know, I've heard different opinions on this stuff about sonar. Do you keep it on? Do you turn it off when you're around the fish? How do you do that? I'm a big believer in turning your sonar off. Like if I was just at Okeechobee and I was fishing 3 foot or less, I knew what I was fishing, especially after 3 days of practice. You know what you're gonna fish. It's visual. If you're fishing a visual deal, turn your sonar off. That just, especially if you're lucky to have an area to yourself, it just keeps it to where the fish don't know you're there. You know, anything like that helps to keep them a little, you know, less edgy, and you know, maybe you might get 1 or 2 extra bites a day doing that. I can certainly appreciate it, and that's key to getting those big ones. You hear it all the time. It was last year at our Bass University classes. Stealth was like the #1 thing that everybody was talking about. Do you push pole around? Do you go to that length to stay quiet?
I have a push pole on my boat at all times. Don't have to use it quite as much as I used to anyway. I've gotten a lot better at using the wind and the current to help me with that. But there was a time on the Potomac when the grass was really, really thick, and we used to push pole a lot. We pull our trolling motor up. You know, this is even before power poles, and we would just push pole around as quiet as we could, and we would catch a lot of fish and some thick stuff that there's no way you could troll a motor in there without the spooking the fish nowadays. So
Yeah. Well, I've seen it a lot. You know, we've out on tour, we've seen more and more push poles being used, especially when you're amongst a group of boats, and in order to stay quiet, stealthy, get an opportunity to catch a few more fish. Being quiet is definitely key to get those big ones. And you talked a little bit about your flipping baits. What about your moving baits in the grass? I mean, we're going to be giving away a Fitzgerald lipless, or not lipless, but a vibrating jig chatterbait rod. That's definitely one of my tools. I know that's got to be one of yours too.
100%. You know, Potomac, Chesapeake Bay, that's vibrating jig, swim jig 101. You know, I'm using a Riot Baits Recon vibrating jig. I'm also using a custom swim jig right now that I've been working on for years, and you know, I'm using 3/8 half ounces in those baits, and it's pretty standard colors. It's either a green pumpkin or a black and blue. 90% of the time, believe it or not, I'm fishing these baits on fluorocarbon. I'm a little bit different than Bobby. Sometimes the Florida mentality when you grow up down there is braid, but I personally feel, you know, I get a few more bites using fluorocarbon, and they're always on fluorocarbon, 15-pound P-line.
Wow,
you know,
that's lighter than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, day one at Lake Okeechobee, I caught my 2411 on 15-pound fluorocarbon in the junk. It was lucky, but I felt confident in it. I felt like I got a few extra bites doing it. Now, I did switch over to braid because some of the fish are very strong down there, and it doesn't take much to get you, you know, in trouble big time. But that's my setup. Everywhere I go, it's worked from Champlain down to Lake Okeechobee. It's 15-pound fluoro, 3/8 or half-ounce swim jig, vibrating jig.
Now, here's the big question: when do you throw the swim jig, and when do you throw the vibrating jig?
All right, that is a very, very interesting question, and that can win or lose a tournament. You could go from a body of water from one week to the next, and it could change. You could go from a different fishery, you know, 20 miles away to this fishery, and it could change. You cannot get caught up with what worked for you before. What I've noticed as of late, they will pick either the vibrating jig, the fish will, or a swim jig over each other for that particular event. So you play with both, even into the tournament. Don't let practice dictate it. Even into the tournament, you know, and you let the fish show you what they want.
So you basically throw both at them, and whichever one they're reacting, and that can change during the tournament.
It can change by the hour, but you can't. You have to keep playing with it. Okeechobee, a couple years ago, I could not catch a fish on vibrating jig. It had to be a swim jig, and I was dead sold on it. This week, it had to be a vibrating jig. So
right. Well, do you that's great pieces of information. How do you fold a spinnerbait into that mix?
That's an interesting subject. So I feel on the Potomac, you know, Upper Bay, and a lot of places, spinnerbaits are almost getting, you know, like retired. But here's something I want everybody to understand, and it's something that I'm going to do. A spinnerbait should never be retired. And it's actually a good thing, if you think about it, that people haven't been using it as much. I remember when I first started swimming a jig on the Potomac, how deadly it was compared to how deadly it is now. It's not as deadly. A spinnerbait was my go-to before any of these. And now spinnerbait's starting to become my go-to again.
That's funny that you say that, because this past fishing season on the Chesapeake, I've never had as much success as I've had on a spinnerbait this year, and it's come full circle, just like you said. I don't know if it's fishing pressure or what have you, but it has come full circle. But there are three tools that are all in that moving bait category that is really hard to define when to pick each one.
100%. Wind, clouds, you know, you have to use every bait throughout the day and let them show you.
Well, do you, when it comes to a swim jig, which a lot of people are still trying to gain confidence in, right? It's still, like on the tournament scene, swim jig's the deal, right? But guys that are getting exposed to fishing, chucking a jig out and reeling it in, it can be intimidating. It can be hard to develop confidence in. How do you go about doing it? Do you make sure you hit the grass? Do you slow reel it? Do you drop it? Do you have a series of techniques that you use to trigger strikes?
Definitely. You know, when I first started throwing a chatterbait, I was all in on it, and I had a friend of mine years ago he gave me a swim jig, and it was before I started throwing them. He said, I want you to go to your chatterbait spot that you're catching all those fish on, and I want you to throw this swim jig and tell me what happens. Well, that day I called him because I caught the most and biggest fish I've ever seen off that spot, and it's because they got accustomed to the vibration, and the swim jig was not as aggressive, and they couldn't resist it. So that gave me the confidence to stick with it. But what I've learned with all this is my favorite technique is sparse grass or grass that has water over top of it. I fish it deep into the column. I have my rod tip down. I have it on fluorocarbon that sinks, and I'm ticking the top of the grass, or I'm ticking the bottom at all times and bumping into the grass. I relate it deeper than some people do. That's my big key.
That is a really big key. A lot of the swim jig fishing that I've done is moving it faster and triggering those strikes out of it. So fishing it slower, that's a huge tip. That'll help a lot of guys, myself included. You know, getting a little bit deeper in the grass. I see we might have an IM question coming up back there, BTC. What do you got?
We got hundreds of them.
Talk to me.
All right. Talk about your rod, and is your chatterbait rod and your swim jig rod the same rod?
Wow, that's a good question.
No, it's not. This rod here is a 6'9" medium heavy. This is my chatterbait rod, and only chatterbait rod. It is perfect. It has the perfect balance. When you throw a vibrating jig on this, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just perfectly balanced for that style. A swim jig, I use a 7-foot or 7.3-foot medium heavy stunner rod from Fitzgerald. I want a little bit longer rod, but the reason I use a medium heavy, I like a lighter tip for multiple reasons. I also feel the big thing, well, the big reason is I get a few more fish. I'm not pulling it from the fish. When you get into fluorocarbons and braided lines, you're going to feel the bite a lot of times before the fish has it, and you can pull it from them. So the medium heavy gives you a little bit of advantage because you're going to let them have it a little bit before you feel them.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, two completely different rods. Now I tell you, I found that the strikes on the swim jig and the chatterbait are somewhat the same, and a lot of times, and this is key, it feels small. It feels like they're little bitty fish, because a lot of times they're like hitting it from behind. You experience that too? Big time.
You know, and that goes into another subject. Your reel, I personally like a very fast reel. I have a lot of fish nowadays that seem to hit it and come at you. You almost don't even know it happened, and your line is swimming at you. You can't catch up quick enough. So a fast reel will get a few more fish in the boat, for sure.
And it feels like a bluegill, guys. Yeah. I mean, when you'll feel this little bitty tick, and then your line goes limp, and you're like, oh, that's just a perch, you know, nipping at my lure. And it's a 5-pounder, so you got to get on them. So don't be fooled by that. BTC?
Yeah, we got a lot of questions here, and they've been stacking up. I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
And I like this question here. I like it a lot. Sam S. You win, brother. You win. Send us your contact info. You win the Hayabusa hooks and fish bomb scent that you didn't talk about yet. But basically the question is, what's the best way to find spawning bass in hydrilla?
Okay, so I'll use the Potomac for that. Okay. The easiest way to find spawning bass in hydrilla would be somewhere that is a little bit protected and it has holes, like Bobby was kind of talking about.
Just talking about that.
You know, you got to have an area that is void of grass, that lets the sun hit the bottom. They're going to spawn on the bottom. So any kind of sparse grass, if you notice you have a big heavy mat and inside of it there's a little bit of broken area, you know, that would be a perfect spawning area for bass.
Yeah, that's key, you know, because when you're dealing with spawning bass, right, they've got to have sunshine, you know, so it's not going to be the thickest parts. It's going to be the areas where it gets some sun exposure. So that's definitely going to be a key. And oftentimes, you know, I found there's something on the bottom that's breaking up that grass growth, right? Something hard or something that's creating those holes. So that's where it's got to be hard, you know, so it's a double benefit there. But those holes in the grass is absolutely key in the hydrilla or any type of vegetation when you're dealing with the spawn.
Right, do you go straight shank or Brian and Pete? Straight shank or offset on your stick baits?
I've recently switched to all straight shank on just about everything.
Really?
Yes. I'm snelling it, and I don't know how to explain it. I just feel I'm getting a way better hook penetration. I'm getting a lot more fish in the boat.
On straight shank, and that's key. Did you say stick baits particularly, or
yeah, that question was about stick baits,
like Senko style baits?
Yeah.
You know, I got an interesting thing that happened way back when I first started fishing. You know, back in 1897, we were flipping with the screw in gator, or I forget Gambler weights, big 1 ounce lead. They were as big as this table, and I was flipping a big 8-inch lizard because I didn't know a short compact bait would actually help me get through the habitat. And but I was using an offset worm hook, and man, I was doing so well in the tournament, and then the bite got tricky and I lost all my bites, and I didn't know the adjustment. But the straight shank is something that I've used in my flipping a lot to be more. It just increases your strike to catch ratio. A little bit more difficult to manage, but there's so many good hooks. You talked about Hayabusa. VMC has an amazing straight shank flipping hook with great bait keepers on them. You know, so the straight shank's going to increase your strike to catch. But on stick baits, I still use an offset round bend worm hook, and on a 5-inch I use a 4/0, and on a 6-inch I use a 5/0. And I use that because it just helps me skip the bait. The hook stays tighter. It just makes the fishing really simpler, and my strike to catch is really high. So, but what I will tell you this is, the minute my strike to catch drops, if I notice it at all, I'm going right to a straight shank. That's the adjustment, guys. Go to the straight shank when you're missing fish.
Brad, do you have a straight shank Hayabusa in there?
Yes, this is the FPP straight shank from Hayabusa. This is, you know, all around hook. They consider it a flipping hook. I'm using on, you know, swimming worms right now. I'm using it on creature baits, stick baits, everything. Everything I did in Florida that desired a hook, that's what I was using. So that's a great all around hook. Check it out.
Now snell knotting. Strictly grass, or would you do this in wood?
I would do it. You know, that's a tough question. So I'm all in on it on the grass. I'm still playing with it when it comes to wood or rock or docks with the straight shank and the snelling it.
Because I feel like sometimes that snell knot, you're trying to come through heavy cover, like wood. It kind of, you get hung up a lot more.
Yeah,
that's
definitely
what I found, and I kind of backed off it.
Definitely.
And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, a snell knot is a knot that actually ties to the shank of the hook. And you know, you can Google snell knot. You can go on to Bass University TV, and you can see some of us tying it. But what it does is, when your line's going straight, your hooks, it kicks the hook out to the side because it mashes the eye of the hook against the weight that you're flipping with, and it kicks that hook out to the side, which really forces the hook into a position where it gets a strong hook up every time. So you know, that's a big advantage, you know, when it comes to landing fish, you know, which is what we're talking about right here. But what you got, another question back there, Brian?
I like this one for winning another prize too. Do you prefer a certain tide for grass fishing?
Yes.
And that question is Will Sweetsman. Will, send your info in, Holmes.
Good question, Will. You stole my question. We were going to talk tides, and I'm glad you asked that question. But let's talk tides and grass fishing. You know, you're pretty good at that, right?
I'm very comfortable with tides. Yes, sir.
So talk about the tides. When it comes to grass fishing, is it a low tide bite? Is it a high tide bite? Talk us through the tide phase and the different techniques you use in grass.
Okay, well, first off, I'll just say my number one year in, year out, everyday tide, if I could have, would be low incoming water, the first hour incoming. All your fish have been pulled and confined with the low water, and all of a sudden there is a snap of incoming water that hits them and triggers the bite. So they are easily accessed, and they should be feeding on the tide change. So that's my favorite. Now, I've had magical days on 4 hours into the incoming or 4 hours into the outgoing, but that's my favorite.
Wow, that's kind of, departs from a lot of people. A lot of people would say if I had to choose, the last couple hours of outgoing would be the best bite, but you recognize the beginning of the incoming tide. And I notice it too, and I'm going to make a comment about that on the Chesapeake, because we fish flats, and when that tide gets low, there's no water there.
Right.
Same as the Potomac.
Yep.
And the big fish especially, they're hyper aware. There's eagles flying around, there's stripers everywhere trying to eat them. And so when the water gets super low, I mean, it can be tricky. So the minute that tide starts coming in, it gives them a little bit more comfort. They know that water's getting deeper and deeper. It's bringing current, bringing feeding opportunities, and it definitely accesses some fish. But let's keep talking about tides. One of the most difficult tides to deal with in grass fishing or any fishing is the higher tides. Can you walk us through that? What's your strategy on the higher tides in grass?
Okay, so high tide, that is a tricky deal, and especially, I fished the Delaware River this year for the first time.
That's
and
right.
I couldn't even imagine having to decipher that every day. That is a unbelievably high tide. But on the Potomac or the Chesapeake Bay, you get a 2.5 foot tide change. So one thing you're going to use is, I personally feel some fish won't leave the edge that they're on the low tide, but there also is going to be some fish that are going to use the high tide to their advantage, that are going to go a little bit shallower than they normally would go to access crayfish or bluegill or whatever, because they feel comfortable doing it now. But there is also a one key that I've keyed in on, and it's helped me win a couple events, is sometimes some edges that they have pulled to on outgoing, they won't really commit, or they won't really bite really good till there's some water on it. So you got to check them both.
That's interesting. Now I'm a tournament guy, you're a tournament guy, but one of the things that I really have tried to dial in on, it's so hard to do, but I feel like if I can pattern fish around the high tide, I can win the tournament.
100%.
Because guys get confused, they run from it, they look for other options, but a lot of times, just like I said before, the really high tides, man, you can get access to those great big bites. But it's the hardest thing in the world to do sometimes, It
is, and it can be hard to pattern, but like Pete's saying, if you do crack that code, that can be the winning deal for sure.
Yeah, and they're super, super aggressive. Here's something that I've fallen victim to. I love to run and gun. Fishing the Delaware River, it's taught me to do that. The Hudson River, you've got to stick and move, and you've got to do that in order to be successful. You've got a 6-7 foot tide swing, and you might catch a fish in a place now that's 4 or 5 feet out of the water 4 hours from now. So you've got to be able to move and follow the tides a lot. So that works really well on all tidal water systems. So when it comes to grass fishing, how do you do that? Are you more of a run and gun, chase the tide, or are you more of a, I found school of fishing this grass and I'm gonna ride them out?
When I've had my best tournaments or any kind of wins I've had, it's been off of 1 or maximum 2 spots, and it has been stick and stay and make them pay. Because you think
I love it.
You think you have the tide figured out, and you think you need to be right here, right then, and it's going to happen. But every day I've learned that the biggest fish is going to bite when you don't think they're supposed to bite, and that's the biggest thing. I don't want to miss it. So if I feel like I found the winning fish, I'm there. Now, the best tournaments I've ever had is I've been blessed to find an incoming tide spot and an outgoing tide spot that are close, and I maximize both tides. That's only happened a couple times, though.
Yeah. Well, that's the magic. And what is that? Stick and make them pay.
Stick and stay, make them pay.
Stick and stay and make them pay. That's the way we roll. You got a question back there?
I do.
Okay. Shoot. What do you got?
Yeah. So this is a good one from Wyndham Fishing. He goes, when there's miles and miles and miles of grass, what's the best and quickest way to find the right stuff?
Boy, that is a great question, because we have miles and miles of grass where we fish. So I'll let you take that first, Brian. How do you get started with a 5-mile grass bed? Where do you start?
If it's safe and you can get on your boat and run the entire length up and down, at a high speed, being cautious and just taking note if there's any changes. If it's just a straight line, from the edge all the way to the banks of mat or whatever it is, if you find any irregularity, that's where I was going to start. I'm going to start on the irregularity for sure, or a point or the end of the grass.
Great spots to start. When it comes to grass fishing, it's beginnings, ends, insides and outside edges, and thickest and thinnest parts. That says a lot, right? You gotta find that stuff. But what they are is irregularities.
Yes.
Like we were talking about. And here's the deal on like tidal rivers. We get an inside grass edge, and that inside grass edge is created by the low tide. The grass won't grow where the bank is exposed at low tide, so it creates a really definitive inside edge. Great place to find a spawning fish.
100%, yes. And the fish, they're gonna, the tides. Here's another thing: the tides can change. You can have a little bit higher tide one day to a little bit lower tide the next day, so it's not always the same. So sometimes you want to take note of little pieces of wood you might see in the grass, because you might not see it every day, and just knowing where that little piece is could get you a couple extra bites.
Man, that's a mouthful right there. Anytime you're on any body of water and you see a floating piece of wood or an isolated piece of wood like that, it's key. On tidal rivers, it's super key. But inside grass edges are also created on reservoirs and other places because they have low water, winter pools. They have different scenarios. Rock up in our northern lakes, you can have rock that creates an inside edge where the grass can't grow on the rock, so it starts as soon as it gets some soil that it can grow in. But there's inside edges and there's outside edges, and those are two great places to start. Where a weed bed begins and ends are always good concentrating points for bait and predators. And I talked about the thickest and the thinnest parts. Thin parts of the grass are key. If you got a dense grass bed and it's broken up, we talked about finding spawning fish in those areas, but even in the summertime, a lot of times that thinner stuff means there's rocks or something underneath there that's breaking that grass up.
100%. It gives bass a perfect ambush spot too. It's not only a good spawning spot, but they could use the holes and the sparseness as ambush areas too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got the thickest, the thinnest parts, the inside, outside, beginnings and ends. They're great places to get started fishing grass, but just fish grass. Try to fish grass as much as possible because that's where they're at. What do you got, E?
So this one from Thomas is good. When you're flipping holes in the grass, when do you know to take your time, maybe make 4 or 5 pitches into one hole? And when do you know to cover as much water as possible, making 1 pitch per hole?
That's a great question, Thomas. What do you got, Brian?
Okay, that's tricky, especially if you get to tidal. So, if you are confident that you are fishing a productive tide and you're in search mode, I'm going to make maximum 1 flip in a hole. I'm not going to double flip. I'm trying to find fish. If the tide's right, they're biting. I'm putting the trolling motor on 50 or 60 and I'm covering. I'm not double flipping. Now, if I know it's a productive area and I've gotten a couple bites, yes, I'm going to make multiple flips to each hole.
Man, that's a great question. There's so many ways to handle it, and I will tell you this: one of the things you got to do is you can be in an area and you don't catch fish. I'm talking about tides specifically now, and when you don't catch fish, I have this mantra says you really haven't fished a place until you fished it around the low tide, and you can fish right through an area and you're like, wow, they should be here. The grass is right, the water temperature is right, whatever. There's wood mixed in, there's bait fish everywhere, but I'm here at high tide and I didn't get a bite. What you got to do is you got to come back when the water's lower, and you're going to really see whether or not there's predators in that area. And here's something else I do on the high water. I use kind of a multiplier. If I can get 1 or 2 bites in an area on a crummy tide, I say, man, I'm gonna lay them out here on a low tide. I don't even have to go back, if the bait's there and it looks right, so those are something to think about, if you happen to be a tidal water fisherman. But if you're not, if you're fishing a lake that's got grass and tides aren't a factor, as far as finding fish and how, for me, it's about positive and negative fishing conditions, and you guys have watched the show, have heard me talk about that a lot. But if you've got warming water conditions, if you've got clouds and overcast, man, you flip that sucker in there and he don't bite, you just keep going, But if it's tight, if it's cold, water temperatures dropping, bluebird, you're going to be forced to go ahead and make multiple flips. Alter your approach, go with smaller baits, faster moving baits sometimes, slower moving baits other times. So those negative fishing conditions, I think, require a little bit more diligent effort. But that was a great question about how to handle that kind of stuff. You got some more IMs back there, E? I know we do. Everybody here loves to fish the grass, and that's the other thing. Not everybody loves to fish the grass, but I want everybody to love to fish the grass.
Yes, if you get to experience what me and Pete are talking about with actually that gold mine and colliding with the mother lode or a big school of fish in the grass and just repetitive casts catching them, you'll fall in love with it just like we have.
And guys say, well, don't you get gunk on your bait? Don't your lures get fouled up? And it does. That's true. It does happen. But there are tools out there designed specifically to fish around the grass. Right. And there's little techniques. I'm going to share a little nugget, a little tiny technique that it makes grass fishing so much more pleasurable than it might be otherwise, because you get grass, and I can feel my southern accent coming out because I'm talking with you, Brian. It rubs right off on me. But when you reel a bait in and it's got the grass on it, well, a lot of guys, they'll take it and slap the water as hard as they can and do all that stuff. But here's one little deal that will save you so much trouble, especially if you're fishing a jig, a Texas rig, any kind of soft plastic, is when you get it to the boat, before you take it out of the water, you just drop your line and pop it once or twice, and that grass will come right off, and you can reel out and pitch it. And you don't ever have to touch the grass. You don't ever have to slap your lure. And it's just you do it naturally. I'm sure everybody that fishes grass does it. But if you've never done it, you don't fish grass that much, that little tip right there will keep you fishing and keep you fishing comfortably in the grass. But don't be afraid of the grass. Get in there. Sometimes you got to fight it on your trolling motor. Sometimes you got to learn how to get comfortable fishing in that environment. But I've seen guys go out and they see grass beds and they run to the other side of the lake because they only want to get involved with it. But I'm here to tell you that it's absolutely the best place to be.
Hey, you said slapping your lure.
Mm-hmm.
That drives me crazy. What do you guys do with that? To me, it makes me nuts. You guys are, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm like, dude, we're in 3 foot of water. Why are you slapping the? So for me, I hate it.
I'm with you.
I'll let you tackle that, Brian.
I'm with you. And it's going to cost you a couple baits over the years, you know, the slapping and
do not slap custom carved balsa baits.
No,
that cost $50 a piece.
But you know,
do not slap those.
It's going to add up. It's going to, you know, when we get down to the stealthiness, it doesn't help. You know, I'm so goofy about my jigs and chatterbaits and whatever that I'm worried that it's going to twist the skirt or the trailer I'm using, and why take the time to have to fix that where you could do a little trick like what Pete said and save the time and still be stealthy and not mess your bait up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see guys do it a lot, and you know, I do it too sometimes. When it depending on the situation, when I'm like, when I don't feel like it's like I'm in heavy current wind or there's something I can get away with it, but I do it in a way that I want you guys to try to do this. Is what you do is when you roll cast, and what you're trying to do is get that grass to lay on the water. Never let your lure even touch the water, but your grass will hit the water and just pop right off. I see a lot of guys do the slap. They'll take the bait and they'll just whack and whack, and you look back at them like, you know, are you not? That lure costs $15, man. Not to mention the noise that you're making.
But the bite down.
Yeah, you roll cast it, and your effort is, if you've got a foot of grass, the grass will hit the water and it'll just slip right off during the roll cast, and your lure's clean, and you can throw it right back out there. Hold on for 1 second, E. I just want to mention one more time the promotions that we got going on, because we're going to be giving away tackle boxes for anybody that shares our Facebook feed. And anybody that subscribes tonight, if you haven't subscribed, go over and do it now. You can still get some of your questions answered. We're giving away tackle box, this Flambeau tackle box full of Rapalas, Terminator Frog, about a $50 value for anybody that subscribes tonight. And we've got the Bobby Lane, 31 pounds, $31 off annual subscriptions. It's our biggest discount we've ever had at Bass University. You want to take advantage of that. Or you can just try it for 10 days free with the discount code TRYBU. The discount for the Bobby Lane, $31 off, is Open Lane. Open Lane. But that all can be found at our website at thebassuniversity.com or bassu.tv. What do you got, E?
Is my mic on now, Brian?
Yep.
Cool. All right, so you guys got any tricks when you're fishing under really high pressure conditions in grass?
Ooh, man, that's a great question, and I'm going to tackle that one first. In cold front conditions in grass,
hey, that's a winner, man.
Yeah, that's a definite winner, because that's a tough element. And the first thing I do is I get out of the grass. And that's true, but not true, and it depends on when the cold front hits and how bad it is and stuff. But I will tell you this: one of the most challenging bites to deal with is a grass bite in a extreme cold front scenario. And, you know, there are ways around it, and I know Brian probably has some of those, but if I can find hard cover close by or wood or anything that's adjacent to the grass or that is not grass, when my grass bite goes south because of a cold front, the first thing I look for is some hard cover habitat. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a awesome question, because that's something you're going to face. That is going to happen. You're going to be on the mother loading grass, and you can't even sleep before a tournament, and you're going to get a cold front. And it doesn't have to be a dramatic cold front. Sometimes it could just be that, you know, 10-degree cooler, high pressure bluebird, you know, 5-10 mile per hour wind, and it can change them. With my experience, when that happens, typically the top water bite goes away. You know, if you're on a top water bite, you might want to give that 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, maybe a half hour, but you need to take that into account really quickly, that's probably gone. And what I've learned is either the thickest of the thick would produce in the grass, the thickest patches, or the sparsest of the sparse. And when you're on the sparsest piece, or if you're trying that specific technique, very finesse, lighter line could still get you some bites, but the thickest of the thicks might be the most stubborn approach, where you're just, you know, plowing through all day for a couple big bites. So, and
you know, and that's, you see that in Florida a lot, because there is no hard cover in Florida. It's all grass.
No, yeah.
You know, so down there, the hydrilla mats, the rolling hydrilla matted beds, and that is the place to go in those cold front situations. And it really just depends on how extreme the cold front is.
Right.
And a mild cold front might not affect them at all. But if you've found some fish in grass, just because it has a cold front, don't abandon it right away. You want to go ahead and fish that. You want to go ahead and explore that pattern where you were catching them. But you want to be aware that cold front has probably had an effect on them. And in that case, you want to quickly move and adjust. If you get to that same area where you were getting 5 to 10 bites yesterday, you can expect in a cold front those bites are going to go south.
Right.
And in a place like Florida, they can go away. They can go from 20 bites to 0 in overnight. But that was a really great question about how to handle cold fronts in grass situations. But I've seen it. And here's something else that account for. It depends on the season.
Right.
A cold front in the springtime can be a tough competitor, tough thing to deal with, because the bass are trying to get up to spawn, and it can just knock the lights out of them and things go south. But cold front in the fall can get them fired up.
Good point. Absolutely. It can start a feeding frenzy. It can trigger the fall bite, and it can happen overnight. So that's a good point that I didn't think about either. That can work in your favor sometimes in the right season.
And that's something that I've done over down on the Potomac. When the cold fronts hit in the fall, what's happening is grass beds are starting to recede. There's less places for the bait fish to inhabit, and the cold will actually evacuate a grass bed from bait. The bait will just pile out of it if it gets real cold. And it seems like rock jetties, anything that breaks the current nearby a grass bed can just flourish. You can just get on those mega schools on occasion where the predators are just sitting there just feeding on everything from crawfish to bait fish that's getting flush out of those grass beds in the fall. So a grass bed in the fall, or a fall cold front condition, much different than a spring cold front. And a summer cold front condition is much different too, because those fish are established often in the summertime. And a cold front is not going to be 30 degrees.
Right.
It's going to be a cool front. And a lot of times that can be a friend too, knocking that water temperature down a little bit. What do you got, E?
Yeah. Do you guys have any opinion on the theory that lightning or thunder the night before an event can ruin a grass bite?
Man, that's a great question. And boy, I have seen some lightning and thunder out there, unfortunately. Because Brian fishes down on the Potomac. Did you fish that I guess it was a FLW tournament where we had that 80-mile-an-hour storm come through? Were you in that derby?
And some boats actually got washed up.
Yes, they were up on them. I was fishing in the mouth of Akoya Creek, and I could look up the river, and you could see a black-purple sky coming. And I kept watching it because I was catching them.
Right.
And I kept watching to see I could make it, because I had to go maybe 10, 15 miles from there to get up inside Mattawoman to get weighed in. I still had plenty of time in the tournament. And I'm watching, and then it got so close, I'm like, man, if I don't go now, I'm going to get caught. So I took off, and I made it about a mile into the river, and I got hit with a 50-mile-an-hour side wind. And it was slick as glass. I mean, it was the calm before the storm. And you're driving, and I'm just like, whoa. And then I looked up in front of me, and what was a calm river was white. It was pure white with white caps. Like, not even wave white cap, like just white. The whole river was white. And I'm like, there's no way I can make this. And I turned right around, and I beached my boat in the southern bank of Akoya Creek, and the wind was coming over my head, so I was the protected side. But by the time I got beached, the winds were 50 straight with gusts, and the big oak trees that are there were like bent over 90 degrees, and we're tied up, and I still got enough time. I'm thinking maybe the storm will go by, and I can make it. And the person on the bank, woman, comes out and she goes, "Come on!" And she got one of them big brick houses, those.
It's amazing. I got the same
story. Well, she invited me in, and we're in there watching the Weather Channel. And it's like trees, big branches, and we're sipping on coffee and tea, waiting for the storm to pass.
Where's your boat? Tied up?
The boat was tied up. I beached it and tied it up, and I'm sitting in there, and then, you know, it was 20 minutes, you know, typical fast-moving storm. And here, meanwhile, the guys are out there fighting for their lives. Their boats are capsized. They're blowing up on barges in Mallows Bay. And, you know, so we get out. But what happened was, by the time I got back to the boat, the storm took a foot of water out of the river, at least a foot. So now my boat is almost high and dry. And I got enough money to make a nice check. I wasn't going to make the cut, but I had a check in the boat. And I'm like, we're getting this boat floating. We're figuring this out. So we pushed and pulled and levered with sticks, and I made it in with about 5 seconds to spare.
All right.
And made it back in and weighed those fish. Ferocious lightning storm. You were in that one too?
I was in that event. I have the same. I'm not going to repeat it. It's about the same exact scenario. So
wow.
It was scary.
Did you get in?
I got in time. Yep.
And that
I didn't have anything for a check, but I got in.
It was ferocious. That was one of the scariest.
Was it a straight line wind? They call that a derecho or something like that.
It seemed like it was a straight, because it was blowing out of the west. It was just, the storm just attacked the river from the west and just sat on us and just kept going. And it took the boats that tried to make it back. If you got caught in the river,
on the Maryland side,
you were going on that Maryland side.
There was boats 10 feet into the woods.
Yep.
Like it knocked the way in out. It was.
Yeah. There was no way to navigate it. It was impossible.
How about that?
And but it was quick, and fortunately no one was hurt. But you know, as far as lightning and thunder, you know, I don't understand it. I've seen fish affected by it, especially like I fish out on the flats a lot, and we get those thunder boomers coming by at night, and you'll get out there and you've been catching them, and you're like, oh, it's going to be great, and you get out there and you just can't catch them. I don't know what the thunder and lightning does to them. I've seen it affect them. I've seen it not affect them. But I am aware of it. So if we have thunderstorms, I'm aware that bite might go south, and I have to make an adjustment. Have you been able to assess whether it's an effect or not?
I gotta agree with Pete there. I'm not so sure. I can't really label it as if it ruins a spot, if it actually, the lightning hits the water I'm fishing. But I can tell you that before it hits, or when it's getting close to you, it can definitely trigger some activity. You know, it seems like some feeding goes on right before a storm. But I'm not gonna sit here and tell you a lie. I'm not sure exactly what it does when it does hit.
Yeah, but try not to get hit.
No.
And we still don't know the answer on what to do in the thunder and lightning storm. Nobody seems to have the correct answer for that. What do you got, BTC?
Hey, let's take a quick break. I'm gonna play a Bobby Lane video here. It's about 5 minutes long.
Okay.
We'll take a break. We're back. We're gonna get deep into the instant message board. A lot of great questions come through that we haven't been able to get to.
All right.
We're gonna hang out with Brian, talk grass fishing. What do we got? I think we've given away all 3 Hayabusa hook and fish bomb scent packs. We've still got a TH prop nut, right? A TH handle, and the grand prize. Homeboy brought his Fitzgerald rod and Ardent reel, so big giveaways coming, dude.
Excellent. We're going to take a quick break. If you haven't subscribed and you want to win these prizes, come on over to bashu.tv, use the code TRYBU, or use the code OpenLane and get $31 off for our annual subscription. It's an amazing deal. Come over, check it out. We know you're going to love it. We're gonna help everybody raise their bass fishing IQ. Me and Brian, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we're going to answer all your IM questions. We're going to give away all these prizes, so don't miss it. We'll be right back.
I'm Bobby Lane with Bass U TV. Today we're talking about the flipping stick. Let's go through one of my favorite matte flipping setups right here. This is a Revo SX. As you can see, it's got a big handle on it. This is a Veracity 7.9 heavy. Of course it's going to be heavy. As you can see, let's get this braid off of here. This rod is super stout. But it does have just a little bit of play in the tip right here. So the reason the play in the tip, when you make that flip and get that strike, that fish hits it, the rod kind of gives to him a little bit. If that rod is super stout like it is down here, and let's say you're lifting up, boom, you get a bite, there's nothing there to shock. This gives just a little to let that fish know that what he's eating is real, and there's no something going, oh, this is fake, or man, that doesn't feel right. When I'm flipping super thick cover, I want just a little bit bigger rod. The 7.9 Veracity is my choice, heavy. Of course, my line, it's all over my shirt, Spider Wire Ultra Cast. 65-pound Spider Wire Ultra Cast. Whew, years and years and years I have used this exact line. From the minute I've spooled it on my reels, I can honestly say I have never broken a fish off unless it was my fault. I remember in a major league fishing one time, I broke a big fish off. I hadn't retied in probably 2 or 3 days. And watching the show, watching me miss that fish, it was kind of frustrating because I knew that was my fault. I have never, if you got good braid on and you've retied your line, 10, 12, 15 years now I've been using Spider Wire Ultra Cast, and I can honestly say the line has never let me down. And that's why I'm going to keep using it and look forward to it. Today we're going to be flipping what they call their creature bait. This thing comes in some cool colors. But man, I'm super excited about this thing. I can't wait to dunk this in one of these big junk mats out here today and try to catch a fish. But the importance of this is it is the max scent. It's 400 times more max scent, but you don't have all that slime on your hands. As you can see, I'm playing with this bait that's been soaking in the max scent, and my hands are still dry. That is very, very important. This bait is nice and soft, so when you detect that strike, number one, the fish is going to hang on to it because it's got the max scent. Number two, the hook is going to come through it very easily, which is going to mean better hookup ratio. So let's go ahead and rig this. As you can see, this is the perfect creature bait. This looks like something falling through those mats, those hyacinths, the lily pads, the grass. Black and blue is my choice of color down here. And as you can see, it's got the very nice black detail in it. It's got the real nice sharp blue fleck. And we're simply going to take our 4/0 trocar. We're going to go in about 1/4 of an inch up here towards the top. We're going to pop that bait out right there. We are then, we'll pull our weight down just a little bit so it's easier for you guys to see. Our keeper is here. So I want to slide the bait over the keeper, up over the knot, over the top of the hook, and bring the keeper out. I don't like bringing the keeper way down here or way near to the top. I like it about, at the most, 1/4 of an inch. And as you can see, this 4/0 slides in here absolutely perfect. Now, one of the most important things about flipping is
Welcome to Bass University TV, an online video training course where you'll learn champion bass fishing techniques from pro anglers Pete Glusek, Mike Iaconelli, and their talented special guests. From on the water to in the classroom, you'll learn sound techniques and strong fundamental bass fishing skills. Watch hours of video content on multiple topics at your own pace for a low monthly fee. Cancel at any time. Information is power in the sport of fishing, so learn from the very best. Subscribe to Bass University TV today.
Eric, shut that off for. We're live. Folks home. Pete's going potty Pete. While we got the time, let's announce the winners, Eric.
Hey man, shout out to everyone that won so far tonight. Bud, Jamie Wyndham, Will.
What do you win?
I don't have it written down yet. We have 3 Hayabusa hook packs that we're giving out, right?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to give out a couple more.
Okay, so Tommy Barkley, you won a Hayabusa hook pack. Sam S, you won a Hayabusa hook pack. And Will S, you also won a Hayabusa hook pack. We also have Jamie Wyndham and Bud. They were our 2 other winners so far tonight. We'll get you hooked up with something. We have Flambeau.
Yeah, I think we have some more Hayabusa
tackle
hooks.
boxes we're giving away.
and some fish bomb scent. We're gonna try to include that in all those. They're from Brian Schmidt, the Schmidtmeister.
But I'll do it again in 2 seconds.
Yeah. And Pete's back from his pate break. But yeah, Pete, we just announced who won and pretty much what they won.
Awesome.
And here we are.
Excellent.
Me, you, Brian.
Most excellent. Well, welcome back, everybody.
Walter.
Congratulations on all the winners. And we got a lot more winners that are going to be coming. We've got a lot of great prizes to give away, including an ardent reel, a chatterbait rod.
That's a pack together.
Together.
A setup.
It's the combo I used at Okeechobee.
Woo! The combo at Okeechobee.
The one.
To take second place by 1 pound, 2 ounces from the lead. Ugh. We've all been there. But, yeah, that's going to be an amazing prize. So get your questions together, people. Best questions are going to win those prizes.
Yeah, we still have a prop nut and a G-force handle to give away.
Prop nut and a G-force handle, retail about $40 or $50. Got a lot of great prizes, so get those questions in. You've got me and Brian Schmidt. We got live. Brian has won 150,000 FLW tournaments and a Bassmaster event.
And BFL.
He's won on the Mississippi River in the grass. He's won on Lake Champlain in the grass. He's won on the Chesapeake in the grass, on the Potomac in the grass. And he just narrowly missed winning on Okeechobee in the grass. So if you've got a grass fishing question, you're talking to the right guys right here. So let us know what you want to know. And E, you've got a question for us. What do you got?
I do. So Thomas wants to know, in what situations when you're grass fishing will you leave your weight unpegged?
Ooh.
Pegged versus unpegged in the grass.
Yeah,
Brian,
I want to hear that.
I do too. I do too. We've all got a strategy. I'm very interested to hear yours.
Wow. Obviously, first thing I'm going to say is thick. If I'm in the thick stuff, if I'm flipping in the thick stuff, I'm leaving it pegged. Okay? I think the non-pegged weight in the thick stuff is going to slow you down. It's going to handicap you. It's going to cost you time and cast. So, I generally love to peg my weight in any grass, but I've noticed that sometimes when a more finessey approach needs to be done, non-pegging helps get you a few more bites, especially in the sparse stuff, I think.
Right.
So
heavy stuff, you're pegging it, and on occasion, not. Here's the deal on pegging versus non-pegging for me is the pegged weight is easier to work with. It's definitely easier to work with, but you will unfortunately I pay in the strike to catch ratio department, right? So an unpegged weight will get you a few extra fish in the boat. So that being said, my philosophy on it is like, if I'm pegging, if it's getting me a benefit, I'm going to peg. For instance, in the heavy cover, right? It's going to let that bait stay with the weight, and it's going to pierce the cover. I need that to happen in order to trigger the strike. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to suffer with maybe losing a few fish, because in order to get the bite, got to have it pegged in that situation, in that heavy treetop. If there's a reason for pegging it, then I do it. Here's one that steps outside that. I won Lake Cayuga. I always like to take an opportunity, any chance I get, to talk about the tournaments I've won.
At least 2 or 3 times a show.
The pegging, I pegged a 5-inch Senko on Cayuga Lake with a 3/4 ounce weight, fishing in 12 to foot of sparse grass. Now, the reason why I did that, because I gained a benefit. What I found out was that when I pegged the weight on that stick bait, it caused an erratic darting motion on the fall. If I didn't peg it, what would happen is the weight would separate from the lure as it fell, and the bait would just kind of spiral down towards the bottom. Wouldn't trigger near as many strikes as if I pegged it. And it would scoot to the left, scoot to the right. It would fall differently every single time it hit the water. So I gained a tremendous benefit to pegging the weight. And so if there's a benefit, I'll do it. But if I can get away without pegging it, that's what I'll do. because it just gets more fish in the boat for me. So when I feel like it's not helping my presentation in any way, or it's not helping me get to the bottom, I'll unpeg it just so that I can catch the fish.
I think unpegging is kind of mostly seems to be beneficial when it's a tough bite. And Brian said that earlier. I know for me, fishing in Jersey, we're always fishing behind somebody.
Yeah.
And fishing here sucks. So unpegging it kind of seems to work out.
And it does some different things. Like we've got a buddy
slow fall
in common that unpegs a light finesse Texas deal because that weight will separate, and that spiral motion of the fall actually triggers strikes.
I could tell you that Brodzik, me and him used to fish buddies on the Delaware a lot, and he started on pegging a little 4-inch finesse worm, and there were certain days where it made all the difference in the world.
Right.
Just leaving that, even if it was an 1/8 ounce weight, the separation. And then when the elites came here, I heard Shaw talk about his day 1 to day 2 adjustment was on pegging his weight.
That's right.
And I looked at Dave and I said, "How about that?" It took Shaw a day to realize it. Where it takes the rest of us, and that's the difference between those guys and the rest of us. For you guys that don't know, they figured it out in a day. We take a lifetime.
And he also addressed the strike to catch ratio too. That he missed some big ones. With a peg system, and by unpegging it, he caught 14 pounds on the Delaware, which in August in a creek that had half the competitors in it was quite an accomplishment. So great question on pegging versus non-pegging. Way to go there. What else you got, E?
So we've talked a lot about how the tides can affect grass fishing, but Derek wants to know how the wind conditions can affect your grass bite.
We were just talking about that, Brian, so I want to let you dive into, what does wind do to the grass, and how can we benefit from it?
Wind, okay, so what I've learned, I've used conditions to my advantage. I wake up in the morning, it's blowing 10 to 15, and 50% of the guys are psyched out. But I'm excited because I'm going to use that to my advantage somehow. If I'm fishing tidal, okay, if I have a north wind, generally speaking, it's going to make the water a lot lower. If I have a south wind, it's going to keep the water backed up higher. It's not going to let it go to the ocean. If I was on a lake, I would use it to my advantage. Which way has the wind been blowing? It's pushing bait into the grass edge. I'm going to use those things. So, wind you got to learn how to use. That's the biggest thing with wind. You got to learn how to use wind to your advantage and not let it psych you out, because it can pay off huge for you.
Yeah, but you also got to recognize that when it is a detriment.
Right.
Yes. Like one of the things on a grass bed, a shallow grass bed, if you start getting heavy wave action in it, I mean, you might have a giant school of fish there, but boy, they're all but toast when the waves get too big. A frog bite can go south. A topwater bite can go south in a grass bed when you get heavy wind situations. So it does go south sometimes, but wind is your absolute friend, and unless it causes the water to get muddy,
right,
or unless the wave action is just too big, wind is almost always a benefit. And for a lot of different reasons, it moves bait fish around. It reduces the light penetration under the water. It increases the strike zone of the predator. You can get closer to them because there's noise that's masking your presence there. So you can get closer to those big ones without spooking them. So there's a lot of real benefits to the wind. And I heard you talk about it, and Bobby Lane talked about it too. And I'd like you to comment on it a little bit, because I've done it too, and I've seen other guys do it, is to get the wind on their back to not use their trolling motor. Use that wind to push you through those grass beds.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. You're using the wind to your advantage, and you could get into extreme wind, like Pete was saying, where it can just ruin something, but somewhere on the body of water, that wind is helping. And if I have the opportunity to have a 5-10 mile per hour wind at my back and using my power poles and not using my trolling motor, absolutely it's going to pay off in the grass.
Yeah, because you don't have to be on your trolling motor.
They don't even know you're there.
You're just slipping through, keeping it on. And that goes in the face of what a lot of fishing says, right? We're supposed to turn our boats into the wind, cast into the wind.
Right.
But there are times, and that's one of them, where put the wind on your back. It's stealthy. It lets you be quiet. I'll be honest, I do that same thing for big smallmouth too. Just instead of fighting it, I let that boat drift. I fish out in front of my boat, and even in that clear deep water, it's an advantage, and it's definitely an advantage fishing in the grass.
Just this past week in FLW tour event, we had the same direction wind for 4 days, and it was a strong 20-mile-per-hour wind. And the area I was fishing, there was a lot of boats, and what I noticed throughout the event is a lot of guys would fish down with the wind. The wind would, push them down through the area, and they would turn their boat and try to troll a motor and fish back into the wind. And not only were they using their trolling motor probably twice the speed and kicking up the bottom, their cast wasn't as productive either. When you're casting into a 20-mile-per-hour wind, you're not working the bait as thorough. So what I would do, I would fish down, let the wind take me all the way down, power pole fish. I would swing way out, and now I would run way outside, motor back up, and start back at the beginning and do the whole thing over again. I would never try to fish into that wind for that shallow water technique that I was doing.
Wow, that's a good piece of advice. Who asked a question about wind, E?
Oh, that was Derek.
Derek. I would like Derek to send his information because he's going to get a TH prop nut that's going to help you be more. That's not what it's called. It's called the G-Force Eliminator by TH Marine, and it's going to help you be stealthy and quiet when you're using your troll motor in heavy wind situations.
I just want to follow up on that with a couple things. It reminds me of Dave, our buddy Brodzik, Stormtrooper on the Ike Live show. Back when he was competing in the FLW tour events, it was an event on the Potomac, and he had a spot in the grass, and Bobby Lane either won the event or had a top 5. So this is going back maybe 10 years now, somewhere around there. Dave found those same fish, but come game day, first day of the tournament, the wind blew. This was at the beginning of power poles. This was a year or two into power poles. Dave didn't have power poles, so he was getting blown through it and catching 5 pounds, catching 1-pounders. Bobby was able to power pole down, sit on those fish, and catch the big ones. And they were in the same, within right there of each other. But it was, all the difference in the world to be able to power pole down on them. What's your thoughts on, and somebody asked this question earlier on the IM board, on the noise that power poles make?
I'll attack it first because that's a great comment, Brian. And shout out to power poles. It's a game changer when you're fishing in the grass. It is really an important tool. A lot of my fishing, but especially in the grass because you're usually fishing in 10 foot or less, and it can be so helpful to you because it does so many different things. Number one, what you just talked about, stopping you in the wind. Because in order to stop yourself without power poles, you got to put your trolling motor in reverse. And it just makes a hell of a racket, or you just got to drift through at 100 miles an hour. But power poles allow you to slow down. It also, when you catch a fish out of grass, we didn't talk about this, but man, there's almost always more than one in that exact spot. And power poles allow you to stop, catch that fish, and stand right back up and throw right back to where you just caught them. So, to me, invaluable tool. Little bit of noise comes with them. You got to learn how to. I'll tell you how I get around the noise, but I want to let Brian talk about it too. But an invaluable tool when it comes to fishing in the grass, I think.
Yes, it outweighs any. The pluses of a power pole system outweigh any negative from the noise. Let me tell you.
Well said.
One big key that we haven't talked about is how often, and I know Pete is going to agree with me, the power pole, when you drop your poles, it shows you the hard bottom.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The power poles will sometimes show you the juice in the grass that you didn't know was there.
Because you can hear it, right? You can hear it grinding in the rock or
don't.
Yep.
That's hard bottom compared to the mud. So the power pole is, Brian was just talking about the 10 years ago with Bobby Lane. I was one of the guys that was fishing these events that was oh man, look at these Bobby Lane coming up here with those things on his boat. And brother, it was one of those things where it's like, my gosh, if I would have had it 5 years before I got them.
Yeah.
You know, it is, for what we do with, you know, where we're fishing in the grass, it is the most valuable tool you can get.
Absolutely. And you know, I love the way you say it. You know, it outweighs any noise. There's just too many benefits to it. And even in deep water, you can slow your drift down. But that's funny. I thought, like a lot of us thought, well, power poles are cool when you're sight fishing. That's really cool because you got a bedding fish. But what other application could there possibly be? And man, was I wrong, and a lot of us were wrong. And but yeah, it's invaluable tool fishing in the grass. The noise is not that much.
Do you ever use them like I kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking about chatterbait, and I mentioned the 5/8 chatterbait. Like me and McGraw used them that day when it blew too hard to really be out on the flat, and we kind of used them as a drift sock. You know, had them down 3/4 way to where we were hitting. Because if we power poled down, we would have just been taking breakers over the back of the boat. It was that.
That's a rough day.
When the bilge kicked on,
yeah,
the water blew back into the boat.
Mm-hmm.
So the power poles were, you know, as we were going down, they were touching, you know.
Yep.
And that slowed us down enough to be able to fish and get a decent drift on the edges, enough to catch 17 pounds, which was good for about middle of the pack on the flats that day. But
well, you were able to consistently catch fish,
right?
And that allowed you to do that. And I have used them like that. I've used them even to grab grass, like, and it slows you down.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
even in deep water, like up on, you know, Champlain or something. Yeah. You know, you can put them all the way down, deploy them, and they won't hit bottom, but they'll grab those big clumps of grass, and they'll slow you down a little bit. Yeah. You know. And just like on the flats, the same thing. It grabs, even if they're not touching bottom.
Like a drift sock.
Yeah, they definitely will slow you down a little bit. So from the fishing perspective, I use it for that, but I use them a lot for defense. Like not against other anglers, but Brian comes next to me, I just deploy right in his boat. But I use them, you know, when I'm on the rocks. Like you'll get wind blowing into a riprap, but you want to be cranking that parallel. But the wind would just eat your fiberglass on those rocks, you know. But by partially deploying your power poles, you have a blockage there.
Yeah. And
it'll hit those rocks, and it'll keep your boat off the rocks, keep you safe, keep you, you know, if it's a bulkhead or at the boat launch, a lot of times, you know, you can use it as a way to keep yourself off the dock, keep yourself out of trouble.
Do you have any tips for like my buddy Keith trying to take off, get on pad when your poles are still down?
Any tips for how to pull that off?
Yeah, any advice on how to get on pad with the poles down?
I'm like, I've been in situations where like, oh, I'm gonna go pull the cowling, something's wrong with the motor, can't get on pad, and I look over and I got 2 power poles down in 10 feet of water. You know?
I saw a guy do that Lake Okeechobee tour event, you know, just last week. So
yeah,
and a guy's been around the block.
Yeah,
so it happens to anybody.
Say his name, Brian.
No, I'm not gonna. I'm not sure who it was.
You win a prize.
Oh, that's funny. But when they're deployed, boy, they make it hard to get up on pad. But it's so funny. All these years, I still do it. I still leave them down. What do you got, E?
Yeah, I don't think we've covered this yet. Michael wants to know when, where, and what conditions should a rattle trap or square bill be key around grass?
Great question. Rattle trap or square bill around grass? We haven't heard that one yet. That gets what is he going to win? He's going to win something. What do we got to give him?
The handle,
G-force handle.
Oh, G-force handle. That's a good prize. TH Marine. Who was that? E?
That was Michael.
Michael. Great question. Square bill and lipless crankbaits around the grass. I know you use them, so lipless bait on the Potomac. I mean, you can't even fish that place without having a lipless bait on. How do you use that around the grass?
You know, it's one of those baits that just always works, man. And you know, that's something I got on March, April, May. I mean, you know, in the spring of the year when the grass isn't as thick, I'm really trying to, you know, get the rattle trap out and get in the grass and rip it out. The square bill now is starting to be something I'm using year round, and I'm starting to notice that it's starting to get me a few more bites in areas that I would generally only swim a jig or do a vibrating jig in. So the square bill's more of a year-round bait for me. When they're really keying in on bait fish, you might notice this throughout a year, you know, that your live well might have crayfish in it for a week or two, or, you know, or the next week it has, you know, bluegill, or the next week it has white perch. When you start to notice that they're on bait fish, I think that the square bill and the rattle trap really can take over.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think a lot of people get intimidated throwing both of those baits around the grass.
Right.
And you've got to be, you know, you got to get comfortable with it. I'm going to try to share a few tips with you about it. Now, number one, the lipless baits. You talk about March in our region of the country, March and April. It's pre-spawn. These fish are taking the early season grass growth, and boy, getting that bait stuck in that early grass that's this tall and popping it out, it's just such a deadly weapon. It's such a good tool in colder water scenarios in the 50s, say, you know, that lipless bait is just a killer. Now the square bill is a bait that I'll use year round, and I use it in places where a lot of guys will be there. There's no way you're going to throw a crankbait in there. You know, you're nuts. All you're going to be doing is picking grass off of it the whole time. And you know what I do, and in situations, you know, you can't throw it in stuff that's matted, right? You can't throw it in super dense vegetation, but you're going to throw it in the stuff that's slightly more sparse, or inside edges or outside edges. And you will be amazed at how you can get those tools through that grass with simple rod twitches. And one thing that I've picked up is I use this triple twitch. I know it sounds weird, but when you see it, it really works. And I'll throw that bait out and I'll reel it down into the grass. And when I get into that grass, my rod tip will be down, and I'll raise my rod tip up and I'll twitch that slack in that line, and like pop, pop, pop. And almost always that bait will come flying out of that grass, and then just, you can run it right down into the next clump, fishing in that sparse grass. Be amazed. I mean, you're going to pick grass off of every cast. It's going to happen. But by just being a little bit more delicate, keeping your rod tip low when you're hung up, you just pick it up and you pop it and you get it back down. You'd be amazed at how you can fish through that stuff. And I remember one tournament down on the Potomac when we were fishing in Nanjemoy Creek. Remember when they used to have fish in Nanjemoy Creek?
Long time ago, man.
Big grass beds used to grow all the way out to the mouth of it, and it was the place to go to do well in the tournaments. And I had found a group of fish there, and I was catching them. I could catch them so good on a lipless bait. But the problem was, it was later in the season when the grass was really tall, and it was next to impossible to get that bait through. And I scored really well with a top 10 finish in that tournament. And I did it by switching over to a braided line in the really dense vegetation. And what that helped me do was I could get that bait hung up, and I could slightly twitch and pop it. Like if I used copolymer or fluoro, I would have to really work that bait to try to get it through that grass and pop it out. And you would get out of the strike zone so fast. But with braid, I could just pop, and I could get it through that grass, and I could trigger those strikes even in dense vegetation. So the braid really helped me free the grass out of the hooks. So bottom line is, don't be intimidated, but because of treble hooks, you got to practice, right? This is not something that comes natural.
No. You build your confidence up, you get a few bites, you fall in love with it, and you stick with it. You know, and a couple years later, you come up with some cool tricks like the triple snap. I like that.
Yeah, and that's the key, and that'll keep you fishing around the grass. So don't be intimidated by those treble hooks in the grass. What do you got, E? Great question, by the way.
Levi wants to know if you guys have any tips or shortcuts to finding cleaner water after the wind has ruined a particular grass area for you.
That's a great question. Any tips for finding the cleaner water after the wind has ruined the grass? You know, and this is huge. You know, it's about how the things develop. And what happens is, wind will blow on a place for a long time, and it'll muddy the water. It'll bring that mud in there. And then when it'll always switch around, it usually blows for 2 or 3 days in one direction, then turns the other, and it'll start settling out. And one of the cool things about fishing where Brian and I fish is we've got current. And boy, once that wind stops blowing, that stuff clears right up. You know, that current comes in and just flushes all that water out, and those grass beds will clear right up. But, you know, the biggest thing, or one thing that I've had a lot of success with at lakes and places is I'm going to go to the banks that are now protected from the wind. They're going to be the ones that clear up first. That's going to be, you know, if it was blowing out of the north for 3 days and now it's switched around, blowing out of the south or east or west, that southern bank is going to be the one that's going to clear up first. And, you know, I'm definitely going to look there first. I'm also going to look at, you know, areas that are protected, you know, like there may be a dense part of the grass or even land that blocks the wind. Behind that, you can find clear water pockets that, you know, that can be helpful. One thing that I've been somewhat successful in using Google Earth,
yes,
to identify some of that stuff, and it's been helpful to me on parts of lakes that can be clearer than others. But there's some tips that I use to find the clear water. But you're on track. Finding the clear water is key. How about you, Brian? Is there something that you do or something you see?
Yeah, definitely. You know, if you are all in on a spot and, you know, you're like, win, lose, or draw, I'm going here. I know the wind has been crushing it for a couple days. My personal experience is the only chance you have that piece is going to be clean, barring any kind of tide, if you're on a lake, would be the thickest piece of that grass, the thickest matted up, if you have anything like that, would probably be your cleanest spot or have a chance at the clean water.
Yep.
You know, on a tide, you know, like Pete's saying, it could clean overnight, you know, and I won a tournament a couple years ago on the Potomac because the north end of the river got just pummeled by wind and rain, and it got muddy, and you know, everybody was running up there and just totally would turn around. But here's a big key: the first to muddy is the first to clean. So that mud worked its way down the river, and guys that were banking on somewhere a little bit south, by the time the tournament hit, the mud was there, and where I wanted to fish was clean. So, you know, you can use it too.
I love that. The first to muddy is the first to clean.
Sneaky.
That's a nugget right there.
So, you know, but if you don't have the tide, like I was saying, and you're all in on a specific spot, you know, the thickest piece would probably have a little bit of cleaner water.
Thickest is definitely great, but here's a little, and you kind of alluded to it. The deal is like, for instance, like down on Okeechobee where you just came from, when the wind blows out of the north, places like South Bay and certain places just get pummeled so hard by the wind that they get wiped out. Now, what'll happen is, just like you said, guys will go in there at practice and they'll not catch anything. But then on maybe the last day of practice, first day of the tournament, the wind turns around and you go down there and get just 1 or 2 bites and notice that the water started to clear. You can bet that tomorrow, the next day, you're going to be able to get 5 or 10 bites or more. And most of the guys have given up on it. So it's about current conditions and the developing pattern, and paying attention to that wind where it's switching is key.
That's a winning deal if you can take that gamble and you notice those little things that deter other guys, that you're going in the right direction. Day 1 you got 2 bites, you know, day 2 you got 5, 6 bites. Those little things, if they continue and you capitalize on, is definitely how you could win a tournament for sure on a busy body of water. So
that's critical. Recognizing all the heavy pressure and things that deter other anglers. I love how you said that. And the first to muddy is the first to clear. Those are awesome little pieces. What do you got, E?
Is there any other baits that you guys fish in grass that the viewers may not expect? That's from Alan.
Hey, before you answer that, just want to let everybody know we're getting towards the end. We are going to get into that rod and reel giveaway soon. And Pete, are we basing that off a trivia question?
No. Not unless you want a Pete Gluzak trivia, another Pete Gluzak.
So you don't have
question. I don't have a trivia question put together. But we'll good. Well, let's take another question. And
yeah, so that one. Any baits
How about you, Bri?
I'll tell you something that I really fell in love with the last couple of years. It's kind of an old school bait. It's been around a long, long time, but a lot of guys have forgot about is a fluke style bait. You know, when I first started fishing the Potomac, it was kind of a bass assassin deal, that kind of thing. That was putting a lot of fish in the boat. That's something that I have on now all the time. And, you know, what I'm doing with that is I'm just working it really slow in grass. I know it's a bite getting bait. You know, it can locate fish for me. I'll put a little bit of fish bomb scent on it, work it really slow. You know, I got that either on braid or fluorocarbon. And one thing I do with that a lot of guys don't do is I'll put a little bit of a little nail weight inside the fluke, give it a little more weight to be able to work it in a little more wind or current and keep it down.
Man, that's a good bait. And I'll be honest, since I started fishing a swim bait,
wow.
You know, I don't fish the fluke as much or that style of bait, but I recognize that there's a time and a place for it, and the fish can really, you know, dial in on it, you know, quite a bit. But you know, there's, you know, I'm just trying to think of things that I might use in grass that maybe people wouldn't think of, and you know, there's the crankbait is one, right? We talked a little bit about that. I throw crankbait in places that most guys would never, you know, think of it, you know, but it's a great place to trigger a strike. You know, buzz baits is a tremendous tool around the grass. A lot of guys know that it can be a little bit difficult and challenging to fish around the grass, especially if you've got any kind of floating or dying grass, that kind of stuff. But those, you know, those are crankbaits is probably the one unique thing that I throw. Other than that, you know, it's probably all the common stuff that we're all used to throwing in and around the grass. But it's a great question.
Right? Did you say you actually use a bass assassin?
I do. I use.
They still make them?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, that bait's like 20 years old, right?
Yeah. It is. But it. You know, I rotate with the, you know, fluke style bait or like a Sluggo bass assassin style bait too.
Sluggo, my man, going old.
You know, so these are things like kind of getting back to the spinner bait we were talking about earlier that some guys are kind of dumb with, that are, you know, you can bring it out to these places that haven't seen them in a long time and get a lot of bites. Like they, you know, they're just not used to it anymore.
Well, like the Lunker City.
Yeah,
it's still out there. The Sluggo. Were you around when that came out?
100%.
Man,
how old are you, Brock?
I'm 36.
All right.
So
not too far behind us.
Yeah. 36, and you've already won all these deals. That's amazing. And now you're fishing out on the FLW tour. How are you liking that?
You know, I'm absolutely in love with it, man. Yeah. You know, we're going to these new places. It's not just the Potomac anymore. It's, you know, it's figuring them out on all sorts of kind of bodies of water, and it's by far my passion. You know, I'm very blessed to do it too. But you know, for a while, I'm definitely gonna keep pushing it on the tour and see how I can do, man.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing it. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna give away your rod and reel combination, but I'm gonna need your help to do it because we don't have a trivia question set up for you right now. And can you think of a difficult or a moderately challenging question about your tournament success that people might not know about? Putting you on the spot.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Putting you on the spot.
It was going so good. Without, and don't give the answer. Yeah, that's.
And don't give the answer.
Oh, okay.
You got to hold the answer back.
So I'm gonna ask myself a question.
No, you're gonna ask the viewers a question about you, about yourself.
Okay.
What happened?
You think think about that for a second, and I'll go over to the IM board and let E ask us another question on the grass.
We were doing so good.
Yep.
Yes, dang it.
What do you got back there, E? Anything?
Yeah, Dave wants to know about wake baits in
Wake
the grass.
baits?
Is that ever something you guys throw? Wake baits?
Yeah, I remember the original light bulb, the man's 1-.
Oh yeah. Right. Do you throw a wake bait?
A little bit.
Okay.
This not my strong suit by no means, but a little bit.
It's interesting though.
Yeah.
There's times.
Yes.
Yep. Well, I can tell you down on the Potomac, the 1- was was just like the deal. It was such a tool that you absolutely had to have to be successful down there. Those fish went nuts for it in the grass.
I'm very familiar with that. Yes, the baby one's still
Catching them.
Still catching them. I didn't know if you were talking about like the,
a heavy hitter.
The newer style wake that was going on in some of the lakes and stuff. I've played with it a little bit on the grass. I can't be as effective as I want to be. I feel I could use a different bait to be a little more effective.
Yep. Well, I agree with you. And I've kind of gotten away from it, but there's wake baits are definitely a triggering tool. I know Rappala's got a bunch of great wake baits out there. The original 1- was one that I like, but I used to great success. And I used to use that big light bulb a lot. And the cool thing about that is I figured out that I've catch giants on it in the most miserable conditions that you can fish. Rain, wind, that bait, it's amazing. 4 and 5 pounders come out of the woodwork. And I figured out the trivia question even after you busted my chops. I got it. Okay, I was going to pull him out. I got it. All right, well, I got it, and I can ask it right here on the air, and he's gonna answer it because he gave the answer earlier in the show. Give me the answer. Brian did. I don't know the answer. He's gonna have to tell you. Oh, we talked about the rod that he's giving away, a Fitzgerald chatterbait lipless bait rod. But just prior to that, he talked about the rod that he likes to use when he fishes a swim jig and the difference between the two rods. And the answer is, which rod does Brian use to fish a swim jig? And he'll put the answer down right there, which he gave to you guys just a little while ago. But I think that's going to be now, if you got the answer to that question, that's impressive, because I can't even remember the name but I do remember the dimensions of the rod. And that's going to be quite a prize. Quite a prize. You got any IMs back there for us, E? Or any other trivia questions that I failed to
you guys want to
put together for tonight's show? What's that?
You want to get into drop shotting grass at all? Like the setup used for throwing a drop shot in grass?
I think that's a killer question. Drop shotting grass. Man, drop shotting grass has really changed a lot, and at least I'm hearing a lot about it, and I have got some experience with it. Brian, I'm gonna let you tackle this first. Have you drop shot of the grass? Do you use that technique?
Yes.
Winner.
And there's.
Let's call it out. We'll get right back to drop shot. We got our winner.
We got a winner already?
The first one to comment.
Good night.
Was the winner. Will Soistman, a 7-foot medium heavy stunner. Fitzgerald stunner.
There you go. Well done. Well done.
You are the winner, Will.
Congratulations, man. He gets a rod reel combination.
Wow.
What's the value of that? Like $750?
About
that.
Wow.
Wow.
Is it really that much?
Yeah.
I was just being sarcastic. Holy mackerel. I should have entered that contest. Well, congratulations. Who won that prize?
Will Soistman.
Wow. Congratulations, Will. Good luck with that rod and reel combo. But way to pay attention, by the way. You get an A for today's session. Well, we're talking about drop shot fishing in the grass. Go.
That is a super, super interesting subject, and that is something I think has developed over the last few years, and it's been kind of putting some checks in some pockets, and guys haven't been talking about it. And I'm going to even go one step farther, and I'm sure you guys know about it, and it's power shotting, where you might actually be taking a heavier drop shot weight and punching through the junk and just having your worm or whatever bait you're using to punch through, and you're just barely shaking it right under the canopy of that mat. And it keeps that bait off the bottom, out of the muck, and it just stays there, and the fish has to take a bite at it. Yep. So that's power shotting is a big deal, and it's starting to get a little bit more well known. It's something that I've been playing with on the Potomac and a couple other places for sure.
I've seen it a lot on our lakes, down even on the Chesapeake, where we're fishing 2 feet of water, and on the Potomac, it's able to trigger strikes from a fish that is a little bit trickier to trigger a strike from. And it especially is key in heavily pressured situations. It just can help you generate a few more strikes. I'll be honest, I'm just starting to use it. I'm just, just experimenting with it and having some success. But I've heard about it so much that, and I'm seeing checks won. I'm seeing guys talk about, or in particular, guys avoiding talking about it.
Right.
But it's definitely a strong tactic. We see it up on Lake Apacon, Brian.
Okay.
Where the drop shot, this is a glacial lake that's got 10 foot of grass, and you'll in competitions you'll see boat after boat after boat in a grass bed and flipping your beaver style baits or jigs. The guys that are coming in fishing the drop shot right through those guys are the guys that are winning the tournament.
Yeah, Candlewood too.
Exactly.
Do you think it's similar to isn't that kind of a deal for fishing chestnuts, that they sit up high under the canopy?
Absolutely.
And not that a drop shot is a deal, but
we call it
suspend.
ticking the roof.
Yeah, ticking the roof.
Right? And when that bass is right up under the canopy, like you ever fish water chestnuts?
Just a couple times on the Hudson.
Yeah, the Hudson. That's where they're famous. But the Hudson has a very thin, water chestnuts have a very thin canopy. And the bass definitely, they get right up under that canopy sometimes. And I've done it down in Florida, other places. Like when you get a canopy, you get them on the drop, and you can get them while you're bouncing on the bottom, and then you get them what we call ticking the roof, where you bring that bait up and you start ticking the roof. They're the three places that I've had experience catching fish under matted situations. But like you just said, by drop shotting, you're gaining access to those fish in a much more subtle, attractive presentation, I think, to be able to catch those fish that are suspended in that canopy. I've heard about too much. I'm done hearing about it. We're gonna start drop shotting in the grass this year. It's going to be something that I'm going to kind of take a hold of to the best that I can. But it's a great question. Highly recommend you get involved with it.
What hook you using with that, Bri? What hook you using when you're power shotting it?
Well, with power shotting, 100%, I'm using a straight shank.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm using a 4/0 FPP from Hayabusa. Definitely a straight shank. With a straight shank as well, it's not really drop your rod and whack them. I'm just going to kind of pull into them too. And, I think it just goes well with that application for sure.
Because I would imagine half the time it's telling between having grass on there or having a fish on there. So just being able to slide into it would be beneficial. Like
what's your bait of choice?
For that, a stick bait, a riot stick, or a, once again, like a fuzzy beaver, if I want to go to a creature style bait, those two, something, or you could go to a bigger worm, like, even, like a longer worm that might have a little more shake to it if you're really trying to get finessey, and just leave it in there, but, something that you can get through there too.
Mm-hmm. Excellent question. Drop shotting in the grass. We got more IMs back there. We're gonna keep talking grass fishing. We've given away our rod. How close are we to get? Let's talk about giving away our tackle boxes for the shares.
We'll handle that later.
We're gonna handle that later.
Yeah, I've got to go back through. Last I checked, there was 96 shares on Facebook. So we'll either. I don't know how to do it, but Eric said you can Google a random name generator and do it that way.
Yep.
I was going to do it a very different way, real basic like. Yeah.
Okay, we'll announce you guys on our Facebook page. We'll announce the winners.
And for new subscribers, we'll have to go see who subscribed tonight and pick a winner out of that.
And we'll pick a winner out. And I appreciate all you guys watching and participating in that. And you can still enter by sharing sharing this Facebook feed. We're going to be able to enter you in that contest. If you've not subscribed, go on over to bassu.tv. Take advantage of our $31 off our annual rate using the discount code OpenLane. And come on over and join us at Bass University TV. We've got a lot of great stuff coming. We bring this show to you every month, and we have great instructional training that goes on. We release two new seminars every single week throughout the entire year, featuring some of the best pros in the world talking about what they're really good at. And we'd like to do that with you this year, Brian. We'd like to get you out on the water.
Would love to.
And talk and put this into play. All this grass fishing talk that we're talking. Once the grass grows around here, we'd like to give you a call. Maybe get out and do some instruction on the water.
Definitely, I would love to. So count on it.
Well, we will. We'll look forward to that. Now, here's a interesting thing. You also guide for stripers in the Chesapeake. Tell people how they can, if they want to go out and do some striper fishing with you, if they want to follow your efforts out on Facebook or out on the tournament trail, can they do it through social media? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. Follow me on Brian Schmidt Fishing on Instagram or Facebook. It's very simple, Brian Schmidt Fishing. Between the bass fishing and the striper guiding, I'm posting pretty often, and all our rock fishing is done on the Chesapeake Bay, the lower bay, where it's a little too salty for the bass. And, we have 2 boats, 2 46-foot boats taking out all private trips, 6 to 15, 20 people. And, you come out, you just bring your food and drink and have a good time. And that's, you can follow us on that on ChesapeakeFishing.com or loosenupcharters.com, or, just get with me on Facebook or Instagram. We can get you squared away on a trip. So, definitely check me out. I appreciate it.
Where do you go out of?
We go out of Deal, Maryland. It's a little town about 20 minutes south of Annapolis. If you blink, you'll miss it. But it's a very, very nice town. It's kind of a fishing community there, and there's a lot of crabbing that goes on, and most people down there will actually stop and talk to you. So, come on. And we go out at a Happy Harbor in Deal, Maryland.
Man, that sounds like too much fun. We're gonna have to take that trip, Brian. We
I'm in.
Yeah. How are you running trips now?
No, we're done till April. It's April till December 31st. So
April to December. What happens at December 31st? Do they migrate away from the area, or does the season close, or what happens?
That is by law. The season's done. The season's actually done in Maryland December 20th, but we take the boat down to Point Lookout, which extends it to the 31st. But that's it. For the whole Chesapeake Bay, it's over on December 31st, and it opens up back in April. They close it down with the belief that they're spawning in March and April, and most of them spawning in March, and they're done by the time it opens up in April. We have the fish all year round, but the big migratory, big trophy rockfish only come into the bay to spawn, and then they leave. Generally, right now in February, they're coming in, spawning in March, and then leaving in April and May.
Gotcha. Well, we see some of them up on the upper Chesapeake where the final destination is, in those big giant grass beds, and it's a sight to see. I mean,
oh, yeah.
You can visually see the big cows that are 40 or 50 pounds, and you got and there's always a group of males around them, and that's the way they do it. They do it out in open water, a lot different than a largemouth, and the males will rub and be all around the female and just running all over the flats. It's an awesome sight.
It is. It's definitely we're lucky to be part of it. The Chesapeake Bay is generally about 70% of the whole Atlantic coast of striped bass spawn in the Chesapeake Bay. So we got to preserve it and take care of it for sure.
It's pretty interesting up on the upper bay too, in that spring when they're up there, is the striper, because there's a catch and release period that's available on the upper bay, and you'll see those big largemouth in the mix out with them stripers. They'll catch 6, 7, 8 pounders.
Wow.
Largemouth right in the mix in those largemouth that are up feeding on herring and the shad that come up in the deal. But it's pretty neat. You don't see that down there in the salt water?
No, we're not seeing that. So that is pretty cool. I might have to come up there and check that out.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to pattern it for tournament scenarios, but I only wind up catching stripers. Yeah,
they're fun to catch.
Yeah, the largemouth, but they're in the mix. You see them all the time.
Wow.
See them all the time up there. But
it's a completely different biomass of striped bass from the Chesapeake to the Delaware, from what I understand.
Yes.
They don't intermix. The fish that run the Delaware and the fish that run the Chesapeake are
And it's crazy that's what, you know, because there's a connection there with the Chesapeake Delaware Canal.
C&D Canal, yeah.
And of course they're connected out in the ocean, but they, you know, they're different. I know the largemouth, because up on the Delaware, you know, we've got this great population of largemouth, but boy, catching a 5-pounder is a rare occasion.
Did you just say we have a great population of largemouth?
Yeah, I think we do.
Where? Settle down, bro.
I've got rose-colored glasses.
Settle
I love that
down.
place, man.
Jeez.
It's the home of the Philadelphia. You can see the Eagle Stadium
Look at
from
that.
out there.
Oh my God! Here we go.
I love that place. But yeah, but you go to the Chesapeake and you can catch 4-pounders, you know, every third cast sometimes, you know, and you wonder how those gene pools don't mix, and how they're, you know, I don't understand it, but it is certainly that way, and I guess it's the same way with the stripers.
100%. Every once in a while, we'll catch a fish in the Chesapeake with a Delaware tag or a New Jersey tag, but it's more of a Virginia tag is what we'll see more than that.
So you are seeing Delaware River striper down there?
Every once in a while.
See, I must get bad intel then, because I was told they're kind of different, even genetically different.
Very, very, very rare.
Okay.
Very rare. Cool. But I do know for a fact there is fish that come in through the C&D Canal.
Yeah.
You know, at times.
You ever fished the C&D?
I never have. The reason I say that, we'll get an early run of big cow rock, or 40-pound rockfish in December, and where we're at in the bay, we're about 50 miles below the flats. The guys down at the bottom of the bay haven't even caught a big fish, and they have to come 90 miles north to get to us. So no guys below us have caught one, and they're targeting them, but we're catching a couple up our way, and the further north you go, the better. So I feel that a few sneak in through the canal for sure.
Could be. Yeah.
Well, I've heard up in the canal that they've shocked smallmouth out of the canal system.
Is that right?
Yeah, but I've never heard of anybody going in there to win a fishing tournament of any kind. Some of the harbors up there.
Yeah, I always thought, as far as the Delaware River goes, they would be loaded.
Right.
But the Chesapeake, with that different current, it's just a totally different setup.
Yeah.
A cove on the Delaware is gold.
Yes, it absolutely is, and grass down on the Chesapeake is gold. Indeed. But anyway, check out Brian. Come down, take a striper charter. I'd love to go down and do that. I love striper fishing. It's just a lot of fun. I go striper fishing on the Delaware River and the Chesapeake when I'm not largemouth fishing. It's the other species I like to chase.
This year.
What's that now?
I went out with Avena this year.
Did you go striper fishing with him?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You burned like 200 gallons worth of gas.
Yeah. We didn't see a fish. The next day, he ran another 6-7 miles further north. I mean, we ran. Yeah. He hustled, but there was nothing. It was the Dead Sea. They moved so much. The next day, I watched his Instagram feed, and dude. They were catching them doubles on topwater. He caught 50. The guys he had out, they caught 50 bass that day. 50 stripers.
Stripers are always chewing.
Yeah.
That's all you need to remember. If you are not catching them, you're not there.
Around them.
They eat all day, every day.
And that was his thing. He's like, he didn't want to cast. We just were running.
Right.
Running and looking and talking on the over the radio all day. Dude, we ran from Cape May to Atlantic City. And we were about 6-7 miles short of where it was all happening.
Yep.
But never got the word. And we just ran. Never took a cast.
Yep.
Trolled a little bit, but anyhow.
Well, it's on the Delaware and Chesapeake. Like, I go for stripers and I make about 10 casts. And if I don't catch them, I go back to bass fishing. That's just the.
Yep.
I either find them, like you said, or I don't. And I don't waste much time, with them. But it's nice to see, like on the Delaware. I mean, I promise you, I've seen, half a mile of seagulls with striped bass, pushing them up. And they're not the big ones that you're fishing for, but they're the ones that are maybe 2-3 years old. They're maybe this big, maybe 5 or 10 pounders, a real big one. And then you'll catch a lot of those 3 to 5 pounders. But they're just a ball. I mean, they're just busting top water and hitting anything you throw at them, and then they're going. You know, just
Yep.
like that, they're moving on to the next shoal.
So
That's
let's
when
wrap
you go
this up, man.
largemouth fishing. What do you got?
Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
Yep.
Hey Brian, I really appreciate it, man. You've helped me, given me some really good tidbits. I know everybody at home is going to be a better bass fisherman, a better grass fisherman as a result. So I appreciate you coming on, man, and good luck the rest of the season. You started off with a bang, so we're expecting to see you.
Well done, man. Well, way to get that started.
Expecting to see you take a good shot at winning that cup this year.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, guys. I really want to thank you for having me on, and you know, I hope I helped out a little bit today, and maybe gave some guys some insight in grass fishing, and you know, thank you for all the good praise, and wish me good luck the rest of the year. So.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll be watching and pulling for you. And once again, everybody go over to bassu.tv, subscribe. You can get all of our great seminars and a lot of great giveaways. We're going to be right back next month with another great topic that we're going to dive in a little bit deeper like we always do on Bass University Live. We're all going to go and celebrate the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles right now.
Yep.
And
I got two things, Pete.
And we got a couple more things to go up. What do you got?
Well, Ike Live is coming Sunday.
Okay.
Feb 11, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll be Skyping in Mike and I think a few other anglers he's probably going to be with down there at the end of the first Elite event on Lake Martin, right? And then the next Bass U that I'm pretty sure of, the end of March. I think the 28th we're shooting for, and it looks like we're going to get Kevin Short in town.
Excellent.
And I'm hoping we're talking square bills on that one.
Well, that'd be awesome.
That's what I'm pulling for. I'm going to try to fit in another Bass U in the beginning of March. And Jay Kumar won't return my text messages, Jay Kumar. So I'm on you, Jay. But that's where we're at.
Hey, we'll keep you guys all posted on our website and on our social pages. Appreciate you guys all being with us. A lot more great stuff coming at Bass University. Thanks again. I'm Pete Gluzak for Bass University TV.
Thanks, Bri. You're awesome tonight.
Thank you.
Bobby!